It's been a very busy afternoon in the world of sports. We'll start in the NFL and specifically the Las Vegas Raiders as edge rusher Max Crosby is signing a 3-year, $106.5 million extension that does include $91.5 million guaranteed, making him now the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. The Raiders also did sign offensive lineman Alex Kappa to a 2-year, $11.2 million deal. The Eagles also got involved. They continue to hand out extensions following their Super Bowl win, and today it was All-Pro linebacker Zach Baun. He gets a 3-year, $51 million deal. $31 million of that is guaranteed. And then the Seattle Seahawks, they're going to look very different come next season. Wide receiver Tyler Lockett was released after 10 seasons with the club. And then following that, fellow wide receiver DK Metcalf has requested a trade. And for Metcalf, he does have one more year remaining on his current deal. The Bears, though, did get the day underway. They continue to make trades to build their offensive line. They do send a 2026 fourth to Kansas City for guard Joe Thuney. And Dallas continues to restructure and create cap space. Today it was quarterback Dak Prescott's contract, and that opens up $36.6 million in cap space. To the Sabres, it is 4 losses in a row. They'll be back at it tomorrow on the road versus the Lightning. But Pierre LeBrun is reporting the Sabres and forward Jordan Greenway are finalizing a 2-year extension with an average annual value of around $4 million, though nothing official as of yet. And then in college hoops, massive game in the MAC, UB women on the road versus Ball State at 6:30. That game will be over on our sister station, the Bet 1520. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of business. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Schopp and the Bulldog.
Uh-oh. Guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody?
Monday, Tuesday, hump day is halfway. It's Mike Schopp.
Mike. What day is it, Mike?
And the Bulldog.
Hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on. I know you can hear me.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
Guess what today is?
It's hump day.
Woo-hoo!
On WGR
Hump Day
Sports Radio 550.
All right. A lot of news today, or rumors at least.
Why are you guys talking about DK Metcalf?
There's some fun stuff to talk about. Is that a thing that was actually said?
No, I don't know. I was just kidding. I thought it would be funny if the show were on the air for 14 seconds and someone screamed, "Why aren't you talking about DK Metcalf?"
Okay, why aren't we?
I chose to be
I thought
that
you
person.
said, why are we?
No,
there is
sorry.
a possibility. It would be the kind of thing I would say sometimes when free agency and stuff is starting to happen, and then maybe somebody calls in with like a very wild idea that I think is such a remote possibility that I might say, we really don't need to be talking about this.
Yeah.
But DK Metcalf would, I don't think, have qualified for that. Mostly, we did get some calls on him, like in the last month. We have gotten some.
Yeah.
I think any trade is, unlikely. Like any idea you have is less than 50-50 to happen. But the reason for me on Metcalf that I would be that way is I just don't see the Bills wanting to bet big at receiver, but I don't have to be right. Like we've kind of all wanted them to for years.
Right.
And they really haven't. And they could still use this player. They could still use, a wide receiver one.
Yes, they could. Yeah, well, but you're in the room with me, so for anyone who might have heard it wrong, I guess I didn't enunciate. I rushed it. Why aren't you talking about DK Metcalf? It was what I meant to scream there. So anyway. Yeah, no, I know. The first thought I had, it's
it probably is what you said.
It's definitely what I said, but it did not come out very cleanly, which is thus the confusion and the clarification. But nonetheless, anyways, first thought I have is similar to that, right? I need Myles Garrett more than I need DK Metcalf. Of course, like that is less than 50-50 to happen as well, and maybe even worse than that, and certainly not in a time frame that you might be able to live with. So, you can put that over there. You can forget about a lot has happened today. You can forget about Max Crosby. There's been a new commitment. He's the new highest paid non-quarterback in the history of football, signing an extension with the Raiders. So that's done. And so, but
are you sure?
I think so. I don't expect this to be a sign and trade, but I mean, I guess anything could happen.
They're pretty proud of themselves.
But my first thought is prioritize. If I'm making a big trade and signing a guy to a big extension, I'm prioritizing defensive line or defensive end, Myles Garrett. But doesn't matter how much I want to prioritize that, or even Brandon Beane wants to prioritize that. It might not be available to you until the summer, if ever. So, but then I'm still, the Bills had the MVP. They were second in the league in scoring. They set a franchise record for points. How many more points are they going to score if they pay DK Metcalf $30 million a year to be on their team?
Wouldn't you love to know?
That's a jerky way to look at it because it ignores the impact he could have. Just, you don't necessarily need to score more points. It's, how you score them and how quickly you can score them and in what games you score them, i.e. against the Chiefs in the playoffs, I guess. Anyway, so I'm sort of lukewarm about it. It's a big commitment. Then you start looking at highlights.
Oh my gosh,
and
he's the king.
Your head just starts to explode. Okay, I get it.
I'm in.
I mean, I know. I knew this before I watched it again. I've watched him play football. I can recall watching him play football recently. I know what a freak show he is, but seeing it again, and just like, okay, well. All I'm saying is it does not take me a long time at all to get talked into this being the best idea of all time.
We got to talk about price, and if we're going to start at a point where we think it's realistic enough, which we are, I think that's what we've learned here, what it costs and everything else. He is a memorable draft prospect for me. 6 years ago, this is now. So 2019, right out of the combine, right? We're just out of the combine. And remember Metcalf, who, the highlights then, the look at him, right? Like this guy looks like he could be incredible.
I remember saying on the air, regrettably, I think he's too jacked up.
Well, he's too
big.
Impressive to look at. But then he went to the combine and he had that 3-cone debacle.
He fell or slipped or
just
something.
And he was kind of polarizing from there, if not before that. And he ends up going, what, third round, second round?
Last pick of the second round, I think, is where he got
pick
chosen.
64.
Yeah. So, he certainly has he's outkicked that draft status without any question.
Yes, but he's not a perfect player. He looks like maybe he should be. But I don't think he's a perfect player. We were talking about him on ADP Chasing on Monday, my podcast with Pat Crane and Davis Maddock. And Davis said something about, right at the end of the show, we got to Metcalf. And he said something about, Metcalf is a guy, I'm not sure if we were talking about Green Bay. I think it was about Green Bay. Like that was one rumor, maybe the rumor. And like Metcalf being a guy that, goal to go or whatever, just like he is the go-to guy in your offense. And I said something like, but he really almost never really was that for Seattle. Like just it's a subjective thing. But he has not been somebody that like, okay, the ball's going to him. Like somebody that just takes over games. It's happened a few times, but he's not on the top level. And, that doesn't mean he's not good enough for the Bills necessarily, but he's not on the top level. He's somebody that athletically blows your mind. But I want to, dig into some of his numbers and see just like, I probably should know already, but how many like top games he's had. He's had some. He's an interesting idea. And it sounds like he's available, which is not obvious about Garrett.
Right.
You don't know if you can even get him Metcalf is somebody that you could probably get.
Right. When the Seahawks people, is it still John Schneider, talked about him, I think even earlier, maybe late last week, because it's only Wednesday, so I don't know about earlier this week. But I feel like in the last few days, they were, talking maybe at the combine, whatever, like everybody does take their turns. And they were asked about, I don't have the quote here, but it's sort of like, he's on our team. Kind of. It was not defiant. It was, there had not been a trade request by that point. But the reporting I think we're seeing is it not right that they're letting him go look, which is something that the Browns are not doing with Garrett at all yet. Like, they are defiantly saying this is not happening, and the Seahawks are kind of like, hey, go see what you can find out there, and if we like it, then maybe we'll figure something out for you. So that makes it more realistic in this time frame, the time frame you'd like to be working on in the offseason, as opposed to waiting until the summer to see if someone is going to shake free. And that's a risky bet to make. Like, if you're waiting on the sidelines to see if Myles Garrett's going to shake free in July sometime, I mean, that's just that's a hell of a bet to make.
Can you see? Just JSN's tweet. I don't know. Why don't you read it? AO WTF. I don't know what that is supposed to mean exactly. It's probably like, what are we doing? Because Lockett was released too. Right. But it also could, speaking of fantasy, probably is kind of amazing for him. But could you see, anybody who wants this question, this is the question, can you see the Bills making that move, Metcalf? Can you see them wanting to do it? Like, seriously? I think it's close for me. I wouldn't say that I can't see it, but I said it even yesterday. I say it all the time. What they sort of became with Joe Brady in charge, and how did it go? End of 2 years ago, all of last year, how did it go? Amazingly well.
Second highest scoring team in football, franchise record in points. Quarterback was the MVP. Tell me why I need a $30 million wide receiver.
Yeah, and, Stephon Diggs was on the team the first, phase of that, and his production dipped, like, immediately. He became sort of like a bit part, almost, in the offense, then was traded, and it was the whole plan. Right? I'm trying to avoid the slogan. It was the whole plan to spread the ball around. And they talked all year about how valuable that was and how effective that was. And the results pretty much proved it. So does that team trade their number one pick? Maybe a second instead?
Maybe a second, yeah.
All right.
This should not cost anywhere near what Myles Garrett looks to cost.
It's a good draft pick, but it's more like the commitment, because you would sign him to a huge deal immediately. Whoever trades for Metcalf, you're not trading for him and not doing that.
Right.
So do the Bills want to make that commitment on a wide receiver one, and then, this one, who is not perfect, but athletically is pretty close. So that's the question.
Yeah, I mean,
I could see it happening, but I'm not betting on it.
He absolutely represents something that they do not have at all. It's speed, it's size, it's winning one-on-one, it's winning against press. I mean, it's all of it. So I'm not sure the way I just described it makes him sound like he's perfect. So I don't know where the imperfections are, but to my understanding is he's good at all of that stuff, if not great at all that stuff. So there's maybe temperament that it might be considered, because he's been kind of like a guy that can be kind of hot-headed, I think. And I don't know about the Bills, the amount of reluctance they might have to bite that off, but he definitely represents something they do not have. Are they seeking it is the question. And I don't have a hard yes or no either on that. I really don't know, because last year does loom as evidence that they didn't need it. But what have I said all off season? They started out not feeling like they needed it, and then they tried to address it by going and getting Cooper. And that didn't really work.
No.
I mean, the offense worked, but Cooper did not work.
Right. Itself, you could draw different conclusions from that.
Right. They felt they needed a guy that represented that. Like, that's what they thought they were, a guy that can beat man, got a number one, basically, is what they were acquiring in Cooper. And I don't want to hold how it went as evidence that they don't need that, or that they thought they didn't need that. They went and got it. I mean, they traded a piece, a third-round pick for that. So I thought all offseason they'll need to replace that somehow, some way. But this is like, you're going from shopping at the big box store to, Rodeo Drive. Like, you're right at the top of the market if you're chasing DK Metcalf. And I don't know if their appetite for that is strong, and I'm not even sure if it should be. Because I wonder if they can't get by with some other more moderately priced outside receiver that can, get open against man coverage. Like, I don't know who that guy is on the marketplace right now, but, 3 hours ago, we didn't know DK Metcalf would be on the marketplace. 4 hours ago, we didn't know Christian Kirk would be on the marketplace. Not that he fits that profile, but guys over the next 3-4 days leading up to Monday are going to land in the bin that, and maybe you can wait it out and get guys, if there's a glut of them, maybe you can do well not striking a deal with the first hot commodity that becomes available. So I don't know where to land on that. But the player, I can't campaign for it, but I definitely would be happy if they pulled it off.
Man, it would be cool. By the way, if you're trying to remember Metcalf from this game last year between the Seahawks and the Bills, he was inactive for that. He missed 2 games, I think, last year, and that was one. He did not play. For what it's worth, Keon Coleman went 5 for 70 and a touchdown. The rumor about the Packers was Metcalf to Green Bay for their first-round pick, I think it was, a high pick, and
one of the young guys,
a receiver, because the Packers have like 4 receivers and 2 tight ends, by the way, who are all in like their second or third season. So somebody cheaper. And, that's an interesting rumor. I mean, I think that made a lot of sense for Seattle to get somebody and a pick, and just sort of reset, moving on from Metcalf. It's debatable whether they should want to do that, but his contract is coming up next year, and they haven't really won, so you could see it. I don't have anything on like that he's not still good.
Yep. And they're also coming up on, it's probably not this year, but at some point, a reset at quarterback.
Yep.
So do you want to have Metcalf under contract for, say, 4 or 5 more years at huge top-of-the-market money while you're going through that? That's probably not great. So
Lockett being released is that Lockett, it looked like last year, just couldn't do it anymore. So
10 years in,
he was when I on the podcast with Davis, like when I made the point about Seattle, like Metcalf is really just not whatever the words were I used, like sort of the go-to guy, often enough anyway for the Seahawks. And Davis was like, you're right, Lockett was Wilson's guy, more.
Mm-hmm.
There was word of like some difficulties between Wilson and Metcalf. Wilson has had that with a lot through his career, just for being kind of maybe odd. But anyway, it's a very exciting idea. 803-0550. Do you think the Bills would want to pursue Metcalf? He's not you said earlier, a different receiver. It doesn't cost as much. Would they want to invest in somebody like that? There are names. I mean, already. I didn't think Christian Kirk was getting cut by his contract and, getting Lawrence back, new coach. That one surprised me. I don't know if it's like injury related. He's a pretty big cap number, Kirk. But I don't know. That was just my guess that he was probably safe there, and he's being released. He and Allen are supposedly tight.
I mean, I got a picture of the two of them with a bunch of other dudes at this golf the Tiger Woods indoor golf thing, and Kirk is the guy right next to Allen in the photo. So yeah, I assume that's a bachelor party. So that's your best friends. I think that's usually how that works anyway. That's how it worked for me. I think most dudes do it that way, and ladies on their end too. So I assume they're tight. I don't see a fit there at all for the Bills. Yeah, you got to go back to 2020 in Arizona to see him playing a lot on the outside. So I don't know that means he can't do it, but it's been like 80. It was last year 84% of the snaps in the slot. I mean, all I have are slot. I've got Shakir already. I've got Kincaid already. Samuel, maybe his best spot is that too. And I'm going to get another one. So despite the friendship, and they just committed to Shakir, Kincaid's only going into year 3. I just don't see a fit there at all, unless they think they really can use him in a way he has not been used in 5 years, which I think would come with some risk. So I would worry about that. So I don't see a fit with him. But he's certainly a named guy that would get your attention, and the relationship with Allen, is an easily followed trail of breadcrumbs.
Maybe back to Metcalf, or just in general, do you think Coleman could be moved? See, also, and speaking of like drawing different conclusions from things, here, all right, DK Metcalf as an idea. Well, here's why it's not great, because you have Shakir, like you said, and Coleman and Kincaid. You want to get them off, get more from each of them in the next year, Coleman's second year. So that's one way to look at it. Another would be, well, so what? And if you had Coleman and Kincaid still on the team after a trade like that, you're going to hear about how that's better for them.
Right.
To have
it would blow my mind if he were included in a trade.
Really?
After just 1 year. The only caveat I would want to put on that, but I still think it would blow my mind, is the way they've talked about him here already this offseason. Like, are they so worried about him doing what is necessary, right? Whether that's work ethic, whatever it is, right? There was pointed, more than one time, directed criticism at him, basically grow up. For all intents and purposes, that's not a quote, okay? But like that's what that all sounds like. You want to boil it down, like you're a pro now, so we're counting on you. And if Seattle likes that idea and the Bills are the littlest bit even nervous about it, then I could see it. But I don't know how much more I'm putting in than him. Like, to me, that equates. That's a second round pick, and it's only 1 year in. I know you drive a car off the lot, it depreciates right away, but I'm not willing to say he takes the place of a 4th round pick in that trade or something. I think he's the top thing I'm sending back. If I got to throw in something else, a 4th, then okay. But I'm not sending him in a second round pick.
How well will Seattle do? Like, would Seattle find an offer like that? I mean, say they like Coleman, worth doing? Or will they do better than that? Some Green Bay or whoever else?
It depends on what they think of Coleman.
Like, what do you think Metcalf's reputation in the league would be? Are we pretty much representing it?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's one of the most talented players at the position. The skill set is undeniable. I don't know what it's like living with him. Like what kind of teammate he is. We all saw him chase down that Arizona dude. So
my wife's favorite play in football history.
Right. So there's dog in there. There's no question about that. I just don't know. Like I said, I think he's had a reputation for being kind of temperamental, but that's receivers in general. Diggs had that when the Bills traded for Diggs. Maybe that's a pretty good comparison, attitude, reputation-wise. Because Diggs was not the noisiest, most boisterous pain in the you-know-what in that at that position in the league, and nor is Metcalf. But I feel like there's been little stuff. So I think they should. I saw one proposed trade from, I don't even know which, some beat writer out there. It's the offseason. You're dreaming stuff up.
Let's do it.
2nd and a 4th. I think that's about it. Like it's a almost 30-year-old wide receiver. How he's 28,
27.
All right,
Just turned 27.
Don't let me rush to 30. Okay, sorry about that.
He was young when he came out.
Still, remember how surprising it was? Oh, the Bills got a second for Diggs. Now could be a big 3-year difference there in age, but I feel like that's the market rate. I don't think teams.
He's not A.J. Brown.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Who got a first?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Hollywood Brown got a first for Ravens.
Maybe it is. I don't know.
Just depend. That's the question. Is like, how hot is he? And if you have a bunch of teams vying for him, then it could be a first. Somebody would want to do that. I've got 2 seconds. That's the point. I've got 2 seconds. So defense in the second round, and maybe it wouldn't have to pay that much. What do you think? 803-0550. Metcalf, Christian Kirk, Nick Chubb, Devontae Adams. Their names. Najee Harris. Chris Trapasso joins us at 4.
Stop saying the names of running backs, please.
Who am I to tell people what not to call about?
I said please.
Just giving you some ideas. Paul Hamilton later on. The Sabres lost on Bills night. Did you hear about Bills night?
I did hear about Bills night.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Shouldn't there be Bills if it's Bills night?
I mean, the coach was there.
Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here. Lines are open. Let's talk about this some more here on WGR.
Never miss a second.
I'm warming up to this. Like, the buts are just more about what the Bills' actions and words have told you, in the last 18 months or whatever, about how they want to play. And I would consider last season a big success, even though they didn't go all the way. Would they want to upend that, if that's the right way to look at it, for an alpha receiver? A year, of talking about spreading the ball around and how it will be better to not have that. Somebody, of course, alluding to Diggs, that needed to be fed. Metcalf will need it, and you'll pay him such that you'll want it. You'll need to do it to justify the move. Like, could the Bills get there? And then, if Rappaport's right and it makes sense, outbid however many other teams for him. He only 27 in December, like, young for a guy who's played 6 full seasons.
Yep.
Not worried about the age cliff, really. He'll get 4 or 5 year a new contract from somebody, and
3 good years, maybe. And that's mostly almost any time you're signing. I feel like a broken record every time we talk almost any free agent or player trade, a guy that's in past his mid-20s but not 30 yet, or even it was the same with Von Miller. Give me 3 years, cut the contract in half. I'll shovel the rest into a landfill, and we won't care because we'll have a parade. That's what you're hoping to do when you do that. It's obviously a big bet, and there's no kind of guarantee that it's going to work. But yeah, there's no. I don't think you should be worried. Although I don't know. You mentioned he missed 2 games last year. I don't know if he's got, are the Seahawks worried he's going to break down or something? Is that part of the reason that they're even shopping him? And I think really from their end, where they're at as a franchise, it makes sense.
That's it.
I said it during the first segment. They're on Geno Smith now, but that is not going to last forever. And if they recommit to this guy for 5 years, you're a year in probably looking for a new quarterback. And you don't want to be paying a receiver a top-of-the-market contract while you're doing that. I don't think. It's happened. I just don't think it's optimal.
Right. Look at it as if we were they. We're the Seahawks. It wouldn't feel good. I mean, they were pretty good. They almost won their division. Lost out to the Rams in the end on a tiebreaker. Like, it was close. They weren't great. And Geno Smith has been good. Why am I rebuilding, I guess I'd want to ask that question, with what they've been good enough on offense where I think I might be able to talk myself into, going forward with who I've got. But I don't know. Maybe not. It sounds like they might be thinking differently. 803-0550 is the number. Would the Bills do it? Ben Volin, Boston Globe, says one team to watch in the DK Metcalf. Did he use the word sweepstakes?
Yes.
Bills.
Yeah, I wonder what he knows. Something that should be mentioned here, well, it doesn't have to be necessarily, but I had the thought when I saw this from Ben during the break, is that, we find out about this today. The entire league just spent 3, 4, 5, however many days everyone was there together in Indianapolis. There's no way you could tell me that if DK Metcalf's representatives they would have already been thinking about this. This does not come out of the blue here. That they would have made the rounds, this bar that Sale talks about, or the Starbucks or whatever.
The shrimp cocktails.
The Bills didn't just find out DK Metcalf might want to be traded.
No.
Is all I'm saying. There's no way you can. They might have even known that last season. I don't know, but this news didn't just land on there. Brandon Beane didn't just scroll Twitter like we did, a couple hours ago. Oh,
well, that is how we got to Diggs, though.
That is.
Either way, let's have a meeting. What are we willing to do here? What's their number? I'm into it. I'm into it for the 2 reasons. The one being, I'm always craving wide receiver stars, and that's how I'd want to build it. But also, I'm starting to talk myself into, and this tweet helps, honestly, the idea that the Bills could, they easily could justify it. That's not the point. But how would they seem thinking about what has all been said and done here for the last year?
I don't care at all about what has been said.
Okay, right. And maybe they wouldn't.
I don't, because you're always going to, it's not saying they didn't mean it, but like that, they made a decision on Diggs, and that was financial, and that was
personal
harmony, personality, chemistry, culture, all that stuff, and maybe a player that they saw in decline. So now's the time, let's do it. And they did, and they got a second-round pick for it. And who knows, maybe the second-round pick will be a key piece of some trade, maybe even this one, for DK Metcalf if they can pull him into the boat. So everybody eats. I said it before the trade deadline and after the Amari Cooper trade, because you were right to say, like, what is it going to look like if they trade for a guy that has been a number one wide receiver right now after everybody eats? It's going to look like we just said what we said because that's what we had. We were making the best of it, and we thought we needed more. We played 6 games and thought, in a couple of them, we kind of got shut down.
That's the difference.
And so we're gonna go do this. And they ended up having a great year. Not necessarily didn't put up eye-popping passing numbers. Allen won the MVP with modest passing stats, I would say, but still, certainly good, but not, not top of the class or anything. So the fact that Cooper came in sort of is the first link in the chain that leads you to, they don't necessarily, I'm not convinced they don't want a number one receiver. They just didn't have one when last year began. They tried to find one. It didn't smash, but the offense had great results. So I don't know. I'm not assuming by their actions that they wouldn't be in the market for a $30 million wide receiver. Whether they can afford one, whether they would prioritize it ahead of adding to the defense is a whole nother conversation. But that got a lot harder today. If Max Crosby was ever a realistic option, turns out he probably wasn't. We were all dreaming about that because the Raiders also, I don't think, just like woke up today and said, I think we should sign Max Crosby to the richest contract ever in the history of the sport for a non-quarterback. But that happened.
That would be very Raiders, though.
Yeah, sure. So, and I still would prioritize a Myles Garrett move over DK Metcalf. If anyone out there is wondering, like, you've been talking like this about Myles Garrett for weeks, if not months already, and all of a sudden here comes like the new hot thing walking down the street, and you're just, sure, let me get on that train. I just, the Garrett thing is, the timing could be hard to work out. And so if you're looking to make a big move, maybe this becomes your big move.
Here's George with us. Hi, George.
Hey, good afternoon, guys. I know the parallels are not exact, but I look at all the old New England teams, and I know that they had, with Brady, of course, but I do know they had some really top-end wide receivers, Moss, and, of course, Gronkowski. But taking that template over a period of time where they had seasons where they obviously had their high-end offensive Gronkowskis and Mosses here and there, but they did play some years where they had a mishmash of wide receivers, which to say that I do think I'm not comparing Brady to Allen, of course, but they are high-end quarterbacks. I do think the quarterback drives the bus. I do think that regardless of the quality of the wide receivers, I do think to be honest with you, I don't think the offense is the problem. So, to me, I would rather take all that money and try to get a rotational defensive line, fill in the gaps as far as some other defensive. It's a long way of saying I just think we need defense rather than offense. I think our offense is fine.
Okay. That's fair.
I totally respect that. That's where I started this conversation today from my end, and I just tried to restate it. The problem with it is that you might be down to waiting to see if Garrett moves. There's no one else. Crosby was even a step back and I would say a pretty significant one, from Garrett. Crosby is a very good player. Garrett, to me, is 2 notches above that. Like, he's the defensive player of the year. So the market for that is really him. I mean, it's that, and then it's Khalil Mack, and it's the draft. And the draft is still available to you largely here. You're not giving up 3 assets for DK Metcalf, I don't think. You might, if the bidding gets crazy, you might have to get to your 30th pick. But I don't know. It's a receiver. Receivers, you're right to point out A.G. Brown. That did happen, and Hollywood Brown that same year at the draft.
A.J. Brown was a 1 and a 3.
Yeah.
Here, think about it this way for a second. Well, you don't have to agree with this. I'm imagining being the Chiefs, and you have to say, if you're the Chiefs, you're not going to be too worried about anybody else, even the Bills. Like the way the Chiefs have, beaten the Bills when it counts so many times. All right, do what you want, and we'll play again and see what happens. But my reaction, if I were a Kansas City fan, to the 2 ideas, the Bills getting Myles Garrett and the Bills getting DK Metcalf. If the Bills got Myles Garrett, I would be like, okay. And if the Bills got Metcalf, I'd be like, whoa, that is going to be good. I mean, that would be good. I think I would feel that way. And as it happens, and this also doesn't have to be how you feel, but the draft sounds perfect for stocking up on D-line.
That's right.
I've got 3 picks between 30 and 60 or so, and I could use them all on defense. And I don't think I would love that, but talent-wise, that's what the board looks like, I think. And the receivers are more sketchy. Like you've got some interesting ones, but it's not even like last year at receiver. Although there could be 4 in the first. Actually, Chris Trapasso today, he put a new name in the first round. Jalen Noel.
Okay.
To Kansas City at 31 is actually what he did there.
All right. I got it.
Very sporting of Chris.
I got to get after that. Well, you're unlikely to have all 3 of those top 60-ish picks if you make a move on that. Like something is going away.
That's right.
Which obviously we'd all like it to be. I would say one of the 2s, and something else would be ideal. But he might be. He might outrank that. The fact that he is 3 years younger than Diggs was when Diggs got traded could matter to it, certainly.
We'll talk to Chris at 4. Thanks for the call, George. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here, WGR.
More of Schopp and the Bulldog.
If the Sabres loss seemed significant enough for you to think maybe we'd be all about it today, or at least to start the show, I would only say that we kind of said it, I feel like kind of said it all yesterday after another Sabres loss, the one in Montreal, and also probably 482 other times. Approximately.
I agree with this message. Yes.
I'm kind of doing today what maybe every fan is doing today, which is just denying them from entering my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I mean,
I really didn't get mad watching the game yesterday, if that means anything. I mean, it's just like, oh, of course, you're getting ragdolled by the worst team in the league.
I just had it in my mind all night. Every Sabre on the ice here wants to be moved. You know, just like, get me out of here. This is so depressing. And after all the San Jose just pouring in goals in the third and the fans just sort of shoulders slumped up, walking up the stairs and out. Just what a sad sight. I mean, kind of every year when we get to March, but losing to them like that.
Yep.
After they played the night, the Sabres did too, but played the night before.
Yep. Both teams traveled. That's right. I wish when you had asked me about Macklin Celebrini, I had talked him up a little bit more because he was the best player on the ice by, I think, a significant margin.
That's what the Sabres need, is to get a number one pick.
Yeah.
That's what they need.
Well, what they should do is maybe try to lose the rest of their games and increase their odds.
Okay. There was a big trade today between Tampa Bay and Seattle. Seattle got a pile of draft picks from Tampa Bay for 2 players. The Sabres are on their way to Tampa to play tomorrow night. I don't know where Seattle is, on the map for like where the players would be, but maybe a long shot to think they'd be in the lineup tomorrow, or maybe they would be.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, I don't know. I could look. I don't know where I don't remember. I think they were at home last night. I think they were like
Seattle?
the 1:10 o'clock game last night, if I remember from the out-of-town scoreboard that I did during pregame.
You are correct.
So, but today's, this happened early in the day. They could get there by tomorrow. Mm-hmm. They probably don't have to, but they could.
That does not sound, a lot of things about being a professional athlete sound great to me. Money, fame, you're playing a game. One that doesn't is, hey buddy, you're traded from Seattle to Tampa and you need to go right now.
Right.
So pack a bag, head to the airport, and get ready to sit on a plane for 6 hours.
At least Yanni Gord knows the lay of the land.
Yes.
Because he was in Tampa before he went to Seattle, I think, in the expansion draft.
The Sabres have not been on a Florida trip yet this season, but they have this one and then another one right near the end of the schedule. Chris Trapasso, CBS Sports, talking NFL Draft. His weekly visit is next. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here, WGR.
Busy day in the world of sports. We'll start with the NFL and specifically the Las Vegas Raiders. Edge rusher Max Crosby signing a 3-year, $106.5 million extension. That does include $91.5 million guaranteed, and that does make him the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. The Raiders also signed offensive lineman Alex Kappa to a 2-year, $11.2 million deal. The Eagles stay handing out extensions following their Super Bowl win. Today, it was All-Pro linebacker Zach Baun's turn as he gets a 3-year, $51 million deal. $34 million of that is guaranteed. The Seahawks are expected to look very different next season. Wide receiver Tyler Lockett, he's been released after 10 seasons with the club, while fellow wide receiver DK Metcalf has requested a trade. And for Metcalf, he does have just 1 year remaining on his current deal. And then the day actually got underway with the Bears continuing to trade to build up their O-line. They send a 2026 fourth to Kansas City for guard Joe Thuney. Over to the Sabres. It is 4 losses in a row following yesterday's defeat to San Jose. They're going to be back in action tomorrow on the road versus the Lightning. Pierre LeBrun, though, is reporting the Sabres, and forward Jordan Greenway are finalizing a 2-year extension with an average annual value around $4 million, though nothing official on that yet. And then speaking of Tampa Bay, tomorrow's opponent, the Lightning have acquired Oliver Bjorkstrand and Yanni Gourde from Seattle. The Kraken then get back in return 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick along with Michael Eyssimont. Trade deadline, though, is Friday at 3 p.m. And then in college hoops, massive game in the MAC. UB women on the road versus Ball State at 6:30. And that game will be on our sister station, The Bet 1520. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of business. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
I don't love junior mints. I just don't hate them. I don't understand why they are treated like second-class candy.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
Oh,
There's a
you don't
fantasy
understand why a
team name.
candy that is basically toothpaste wrapped up in stale chocolate is treated like a second-class candy. All right, I get it. It's a good, valid question.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
Is there a time to change? You know, the 3 teams I've drafted this year, second-class candy is pretty good.
On WGR Sports Radio 550.
Welcome back. Wednesday afternoons. This time of year, we really look forward to our chats with Chris Trapasso of CBS Sports, back from the Combine, I assume, or are you still there, Chris?
It felt like I was there for like 3 weeks, but no, I'm back home now. So yes, I'm here.
Okay. I enjoyed your mock draft today. Bulldog, you're not going to enjoy Emin Worry at 8, by the way.
Holy cow, Chris.
That guy put on a show, huh?
He tested that well. He tested potentially into the top half of the first round, and I don't think his film, it's not like he's one of those players that like, oh, pre-combine he was like a 4th-round pick, and now he's going number 8 overall. It kind of felt like a first-rounder before, and 43-inch vertical, sub 4.4 at 6'3" and 225. The first round, I think, and there's a lot of history behind this, is about traits, and he has those in spades.
How deep is safety, and how highly coveted is safety these days, Chris? I remember a long time ago, it used to be a topic of conversation, like the Dante Whitner era. Who was the Raiders guy? Michael Huff?
Yep.
Michael Huff.
Texas. Yep.
And it was, I mean, great idea, great players, but I don't know if I want to spend such a high draft pick on a safety. Is that, I mean, that's a long time ago now, right?
Yeah, it feels like the position, I don't want to say it's not having like the renaissance that we've seen with running back from 2024, but I think teams understand how important it is to have maybe not just one good safety, but 2 guys who can communicate with each other, where there's not blown coverages. They do a lot of different things. I think the Bills were kind of sort of the pioneers of like really not knowing who the strong safety was and who the free safety was with Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde, especially in their primes. So I think it's more important in terms of depth. I think it's a pretty good class. There's not, I mean, Malachi Starks and Nick Emenwari, who we were just talking about, obviously like the top of the position, but there's Kevin Winston from Penn State who didn't test, but is, I don't want to say is Emenwari's level of athlete, but close. He's very sudden on film, and he's a big body. He just got hurt early. Xavier Watts, for all the Notre Dame fans, they know him really well. Andrew Makuba from Texas, who started at Clemson. And I even there was a few other big testers, Keaton Crawford from Nevada, and Marcus Siegel from Kansas State. So, those are more third, fourth, fifth round guys, and it kind of feels like if the Bills want to address that position, that's around the period of the draft that they would do it.
I like how you talked about the Bills sort of being maybe a trendsetter here. You certainly have a lot of teams, it's not exclusive, but a lot of teams, we talked about the too high shell here for maybe going on 3 seasons now, if not more. So there's that, maybe reprioritizing safety as important. I'm going to try to play this way. I need guys who can do more than just maybe what I was looking for, a couple of years ago. So there's that. And then, I don't know, is any of this like the Kyle Hamilton effect? Because for me, Chris, I think I already mentioned this last week or the week before when we talked about Emanuri. That's the reason I got so seduced by his measurables right away. I'm like, oh, I could have a guy that I could use like Baltimore uses Kyle Hamilton.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, not that I think having a good safety is like the most important thing on a defense, obviously, but it feels as though the teams that do have an elite level safety, they usually have a pretty good defense. Now, you can get by without having one, but if you have one, then that's a huge leg up because, again, they're doing so many different things. And Emanwuri is, to me, somewhere in the range of Jeremy Chin to Kyle Hamilton, that he's that big body that can do a lot of different things. The explosion is I don't want to say unprecedented, but close. I mean, he elite level athleticism, and yeah, I would be surprised if he would be available within striking distance for the Bills, just because traits are so important. But yeah, it's certainly a position that I think has grown in importance since the Bills were running so many too high shells and facing them with Josh Allen and then having to use them against guys like Patrick Mahomes.
Right, as evidenced by this mock draft that Mike led off with here. You've got Emanwuri at pick 8. The pick before, the Jets pick, is the other big first-round safety, Malachi Starks from Georgia. So, you've got 2 safeties going in the top 10.
Yeah, it's really important, and those 2, I think, are elite level prospects. Like I said, I just rattled off a few others that maybe we could see one other one go in the first round, but it feels like second, third, fourth round is probably where they'll be selected. So I guess to answer Schopp's question, it's pretty top heavy with those 2. There's not 3 or 4 that have first round buzz, but I think we'll eventually look back and there'll be a few starters that are quality players who were picked later in the draft.
For the Bills, Chris, in this mock draft of yours out today, am I saying it right? Nick Scourton?
I've heard Scourton or Scourton. I'm to the point where I'm watching so much film that I'm like, I have to go back and go on YouTube and see how he actually pronounces his name. And I usually do that in April. So I'm sorry that I don't have that.
No, it's okay.
Yet, but I don't.
If you care for my advice here, I would say maybe not to bother, because a lot of these, I have a theory, a lot of these college players are intentionally changing the pronunciation of their names after they get drafted. And there were...
Well, that's true, yeah. And a lot of guys will change their first names because they were going by a nickname. Mm-hmm. Famously, Isaiah Pacheco changed the spelling of his first name. I'm pretty sure.
Why? Right, he shortened it.
He shortened it. It was not spelled the way that he spells it now, because I remember reading and writing and watching the Rutgers film, and then I was like, wait, that's not how you spell that. And then it was like, oh, no, that is how he spells it now. So maybe that is a good theory that I need to adhere to during draft season.
I don't know, maybe Leggett was one guy we talked about last year, and there was some baggage, whatever. He gets into the season, and he's like, no, it's Leggett.
I will never forget listening or watching a Bills video of Marcel Darius going through the Bills store to buy Christmas stuff. It was a promotion. And at the beginning of the video, I swear he said Darius, and at the end of the video, he said Darius. It was like he wasn't even sure. So that's what I always cling to that. It's probably out there somewhere on the internet, and I was from that, and then the whole Tyrod. So maybe you're right. Maybe I should just let you guys try to pronounce it.
That was Alvin Kamara for 7 years, right? He's his mom pronounced it one way, and he just...
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just a theory. But.
So, what about this player? Edge player out of Texas A&M, Schowerton, I'll go with for now.
Okay, yeah, so not a lot of buzz because he did not work out at the Combine right now, but obviously the pro days, we're in pro day season now, so to speak, pre-free agency, and it's going to obviously run until early April. Like 6'3", 260, very long arms, incredibly productive at Purdue. Then he transfers to Texas A&M. Not quite as productive, but there wasn't like a precipitous fall off. And I always hear with these bigger guys, or I'll read, he can play inside. He's not really that reduced down and be like a nickel rusher, but I think back to A.J. Epinesa, who he was better inside at Iowa, and there was a lot of the analysis after the Bills drafted him in 2020 was, they'll use him inside. They don't really use their defensive ends inside very often. So I think for Schowerton, he is good, even though he's kind of got a compact body, winning around the outside with bend and burst. He was a big recruit, and I like the fact, and this would maybe buck the trend for the Bills a little, that he's young. I mean, I guess Greg Rousseau was pretty young too, but he's not a 24-year-old that just dominated in his last season when he was older. I tend to like the younger prospects. So he would just be someone that might never be an all-pro, but I would say the chances of him just being like just a guy in like 3 or 4 years would be pretty low because he's strong, has the length, and 2 seasons of production with quality traits. To get him at 30, I think would be a good pick for the Bills.
You didn't love the Bills' choice of Rousseau, if I remember correctly.
I did not. No, I didn't. I was not sold on 1 year of production. It was obviously weird with COVID. He didn't play the last season. He sat out. He was super young. And then he didn't test well, which is kind of weird. And it's like, at first I felt like, wow, that was a huge miss for me. And in general, I was wrong on him. But I remember writing, like, I never saw him, like, really take over games with, again, winning quickly to the quarterback. I think he's good with his hands, but we've seen it throughout his, first 4 years. Is he getting to the quarterback in 2.5 seconds or 2 seconds? Not that frequently, but he's become a quality defensive end in the NFL.
You mentioned this bumping guys inside. I can remember probably, if not with you, plenty of other people talking about doing that with him because of his length. Like passing lane wise, he could be kind of menacing in the middle of the defense, but they've very rarely done that with him, I think, as well.
Yeah, and that was something that it's kind of an in vogue thing to bring up when you have a bigger body at defensive end, and most of the Bills' edge rushers have been bigger. But if you really look at the snap counts and like positions, they don't really do it that frequently. They kind of have set in stone defensive ends and defensive tackles. And I'm just looking at in my scouting grade book, my comparison I have for Schowerton is John Franklin Myers, who might be a free agent signee of the Bills in about a week.
Interesting. With Chris Trapasso, CBS Sports, let's talk about some of your expectations for the top of this draft. You've got in your mock draft today the Giants moving up from 3-1 for Cam Ward in a trade with Tennessee. I'm seeing that in a lot of places. I get it from the Giants, and it's, again, being kind of widely speculated. They might go quarterback in the draft and sign like Aaron Rodgers, do both things here this year. They're kind of thirsty at the position. What about for Tennessee? I mean, you could make an argument, people do, that the Titans should just take Ward themselves. Do you sense that they would rather not?
I can't say that I got that sense. I tried to ask around as much as possible in Indianapolis, and what's hard to really draw what they would do, like from really talking to anyone, was most people were saying this is a new GM. We have no historical background. He was in Kansas City, obviously, during like the rise of Patrick Mahomes. But beyond that, we don't really know. And it's like kind of a, year 2 for Brian Callahan, which I was semi-surprised he wasn't a one and done because it was just so bad in Tennessee. They certainly could do that. I can't say, though, that I myself have gotten the sense like that they're just going to pick Cam Ward. And I feel like, and you guys probably feel the same, or I guess I would like to hear what you guys think, the Giants are just going to be so desperate that they cannot go into a season with like another stopgap quarterback in a bad quarterback situation, that they would be willing, maybe not to pay like a Robert Griffin III type trade to offer Tennessee, but probably good enough that Tennessee would just move back the 2 spots, get the extra picks. They're at the ground floor of the rebuilding process and still be able to pick an elite level player in this draft.
Yeah, I think the urgency for the Giants is much different. Bill Callahan just got to Tennessee, so they could ride out Levis and then wait till next year to do something. What Mike said kind of is blows my mind a little. Like, to think they would make the trade to get the first pick and then also do Rodgers as well. Because Ward sounds to me like he's experienced enough that, I don't know, like, of course anybody could use development, but I feel like he could probably play right away. Do you agree?
He probably could. I think, and I probably talked about this last week, the going from Incarnate Word to Washington State to Miami and consistently proving that the level up in competition wasn't too big for him. Yeah, I mean, I think he could play week one. Are we going to see him be Jaden Daniels right away? Probably not, but I don't think he's such a raw quarterback. He played a lot of football in college that he would not be ready.
I'm glad to see you have Shadur Sanders in the top 10 here, Raiders at pick 6. Because I've had a theory about what's making the rounds about him out of the combine, like some teams not, being pleased with how he handled interviews and whatever. And I feel like that is some attempt to get him, by some teams or whomever, to get him down to where a team that's not at the top can pounce on him.
Yeah, that's a great point. We haven't, in that we see these things every draft season, and it's almost like I think everyone just kind of believes it with Sanders, so they think it's real. But that's a great point. I have not heard anyone else say that or tweet that since those reports came out from Todd McShay and Josina Anderson. That certainly could be a team like the Raiders being like, we don't want to really trade into the top 5 for him. We just want him to be there at 6 and just let him be our guy with Chip Kelly and Tom Brady and all the new pieces there. Pete Carroll as the head coach. Just kind of feels, but I will say, if you look at the first round, and maybe this is just my own assessment, but if he doesn't go to the Raiders at 6, there's a possibility to the Jets at 7. But after that, he could fall pretty far if he's not ultimately picked there, because a lot of the teams already have their quarterbacks. And again, now, as he falls, obviously the value goes up. But this is not like, oh my God, a former number 1 overall recruit or someone with Justin Fields' speed or arm strength or Anthony Richardson's athletic profile. So that certainly could be the case that maybe it is the Raiders trying to hope that he falls. But if he doesn't go there, he could slip a little bit in this first round.
Yeah, and I'm just buzzing through your mock draft here, and maybe the next spot I see would be Seattle at 18, Pittsburgh at 21. Maybe those would be ideas.
Which in a lot of other cases it would be, oh my gosh, this quarterback that we thought was top 5 is now at pick 7, 8. Someone's going to trade up. Oh my God, they got to do it. I don't know if that would be the case with Sanders.
It's so wrong. I mean, if a team is doing that intentionally, like making it up about what he was like in an interview, you'd want the reporter to know better than to just relay it publicly. I mean, I appreciate that. 2 things. I appreciate that Sanders has had his defenders who spoke up after there was started to be some speculation that he didn't test well or interview well, et cetera. And no, I was around him all week. Other people said something very different about him. So I appreciate that. I can also appreciate, however, that a team, has a different cup of tea, so to speak.
Yep.
And that with a big personality, not everybody's going to love it. That's life.
The high-profile dad, helicopter parent type thing. There's reasons you could be scared of him. I'm not really buying. He also might, Chris, would guys, if he's not interested in going somewhere, I don't know, is he worried about making a good impression on a team that he doesn't want to go to in the first place?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, it wouldn't shock me just knowing how Deion was and how he kind of came off at Colorado. But it's really interesting in that I think because of what you guys mentioned, the helicopter parent, maybe Deion's trying to direct him one way or the other, like in terms of where he could land, coming in with a lot of confidence and being maybe a little bit brazen or brash, like if your dad isn't Deion Sanders, is that maybe seen as like a positive? I mean, of course, if he's unprofessional, arrogant, maybe that's going too far. But a lot of times, a larger-than-life personality at the quarterback spot coming into the room, I think most teams would feel like, oh, this is great. This is what we want. We want this guy that feels like he's ready to go. Like C.J. Stroud came off that way, apparently, that he was like, I'm ready to take this Texans organization and be really good right away. So it is kind of a slippery slope, and it is why I tend to stay out of any of the I heard from someone who heard from someone who heard from someone in the room, because there's really no way to know what is the motive behind some of these rumors that come out during draft season.
Good for you. The more you say, the less people think you know, my grandmother used to say. At least Sanders didn't say he was going to run a 4-1 and then run a very disappointing 4.39 like Isaiah Bond, right? All he had to do was not open his mouth.
And it would have been more impressive, yes.
It would have been fine. 4.39, that's usually considered good.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But it's Golden outran him, though. Teammate, right? College teammate?
Yep.
And what do you think about the possibility that he passes McMillan?
I think it's a pretty strong chance. Now, I'm sure McMillan has a pro day coming up, and he was legitimately 6'4", 220. There were a few guys that were like way smaller than their listed weight at the combine. If he has a pretty good workout there, and like scouts understand that those pro day numbers are a little bit fudged, but running 4.29 for Matthew Golden, who had a lot of buzz late in the season, kind of a bowl game bias, so to speak, like we used to call it, during the college football playoffs, certainly helps him. And like I said at the outset of this, traits go in the first round. And I had a friend text me actually today that said, hey, do you think Golden's going to go round 1? I'm like, absolutely. You don't see 4.29 in the second round very frequently, especially when he's a pretty good player on film. I don't love him, and I did not necessarily see 4.29 on film. There were a few games where like he would catch like a dig or a slant, explode down the field, and then get caught. Like usually 4.29 doesn't get caught that often, even in the SEC. But the ball skills are pretty good. He's a smaller body, some yards after the catch skill. Now, at 30, would the Bills be like, hey, yeah, this is a pretty good player? Sure, but it feels like there's a chance, unless McMillan tests reasonably well, big 40, vertical, that actually Matthew Golden could be the first receiver off the board.
This is Tet McMillan from Arizona, I should have said, and he did not run.
Right.
Which, maybe was a little conspicuous.
Speaking of receivers, Chris, off of the draft, but I wanted to ask you your opinion. We spent the first hour talking about DK Metcalf. Like, that's making the rounds today. How do you, in general, feel about giving up assets, maybe multiple assets, to this is same as the Myles Garrett situation, except it would be more assets for Garrett and on the other side of the ball. But being such a draft guy like you are you reluctant to see a team give up 1 or 2 day 1, day 2 picks for an established player, or do you think it can be smart business?
I think it can be smart business, especially for this specific player. Now, of course, we all talk about separation and the inability that the Bills receiver group had last year to just get open. DK Metcalf has never been that guy. He is not a, crafty route runner. He's not even Devontae Adams, I don't think, at this stage of their respective careers. But in the Bills' offense, like exactly what they need, they clearly liked size. They prioritized it last year with Mac Hollins and Keon Coleman. But to have a true vertical threat who can be that power forward down the field, certainly is an outside receiver in the most classic sense possible. Comebacks, dig routes, post routes, go routes. That's essentially what you get with DK Metcalf. In a vacuum, I would say no, it would not be worth it. But for exactly what the Bills need, I think it would make a lot of sense and do wonders to the underneath game, Shakir, Curtis Samuel, taking that safety out of the box to
Kincaid too,
play in that. Yeah, Kincaid and Knox underneath in the flats, the running backs on those wheel routes that they like to use a lot. He wouldn't be for every team, and if the Bills do trade for him, don't expect to see, Stephon Diggs level route running, but vertical route tree, he's as scary as any receiver in the NFL.
At Chris Trapasso, new mock draft out today at CBSSports.com. Do you do them weekly?
I do.
All right.
And it gets a little bit more fun now. Post-combine, we have a better idea who's going to go in round 1 or not. And then obviously after free agency, when the needs kind of crystallize a little, then I'm not going to say I spend 5 hours on each one, but then you can kind of get a little bit of a better sense of what teams are going to do in the first round.
Well, you certainly don't owe us anything, as much time as you give us, but, Wednesdays, like noonish, are great, and be sure to put someone different in the Bills slot every week.
Okay, I will be on that. It's not hard to do because, like I said, I do one every week, and it is fun to tinker with different ripple effects that happen throughout the first round and to see who's available for these playoff and Super Bowl contending teams late in the first round.
Right on. Interesting choice at 31 for Kansas City. We didn't get to it, but a name I hadn't seen in the first round before, Jalen Noel.
Combine.
Right? Combine.
Yeah. Big combine tester. He's one that could go there. He could go in the early, middle of second. His film's pretty good. There's another Jalen, totally blanking on his name. Oh, Jalen Lane from Virginia Tech, who also ran sub 4.4, 3-cone through the roof, over 40-inch vertical. It feels like we could see, I think I said it last week, maybe 3 receivers in round 1, maybe 4, but he's someone that could be one of those last couple picks. The Chiefs have a lot of needs for a team that's been to 3 straight Super Bowls. Or he could be one of the first picks in the second round. At least that's what it feels like right now. You get that idea on the draft range because of how well they test.
Chris, thank you very much.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. This is fun.
All right. Agree. Chris Trapasso, CBS. Earlier in the show, when talking about DK Metcalf, I spat out, I wonder how a Chiefs fan would feel about the Bills getting Metcalf or the Bills getting Myles Garrett. I asked one and can tell you after sports.
All right, look forward to that.
What that answer might be. What do you think of the idea? Metcalf, apparently Seattle willing to consider trade offers for him. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here. This is
Headlines.
Busy day in the sports world. We'll start with the NFL as the Raiders make edge rusher Max Crosby the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL. 3-year, $106.5 million extension. It does include a $91.5 guaranteed money. The Raiders also did sign offensive lineman Alex Kappa, 2-year, $11.2 million deal. Seattle is set to look very different come next season. Wide receiver Tyler Lockett released today after 10 seasons with the club, while fellow wide receiver DK Metcalf has requested a trade. And on Metcalf, he does have 1 year remaining on his current deal. And the Eagles continue to hand out extensions following their Super Bowl win. All-Pro linebacker Zach Bond today, the latest, getting a 3-year, $51 million deal with $34 million of that guaranteed. To the Sabres, they lost last night, giving it 4 losses in a row. They'll be back at it tomorrow on the road versus the Lightning. Multiple reports, though, have the Sabres and forward Jordan Greenway finalizing a 2-year extension with an average annual value of $4 million. And then in college hoops, a massive game tonight in the MAC. UB women on the road versus Ball State, the team that is the first-placed team in the MAC at 6:30, and that'll be on our sister station, The Bet 1520. It's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of business. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
In a vacuum, I would say no, it would not be worth it. But for exactly what the Bills need, I think it would make a lot of sense and do wonders to the underneath game, Shakir, Curtis Samuel, taking that safety out of the box, the running backs on those wheel routes that they like to use a lot. He wouldn't be for every team, and if the Bills do trade for him, don't expect to see Stephon Diggs level route running, but vertical route tree, he's as scary as any receiver in the NFL.
Our last guest, Chris Trapasso on DK Metcalf. He is one player being talked about a lot today, as it's been reported he's interested in being traded and the Seahawks might be willing to accommodate him. How about us? 803-0550. BetOnline has odds on where he's going.
Mm-hmm. How are we doing?
8th.
Oh,
I know, right? Gut punch. 8th. 7 teams have shorter odds to land DK Metcalf than the Bills do at 14-1.
Okay, let's have it. Give me the list.
Want to guess?
Okay.
I think the favorite's easy because it's been rumored.
Oh, Green Bay. Sure.
Green Bay is the favorite.
Yeah. Let me see. Let me look at some football teams.
Let's remember some teams.
Let's remember some football teams. I'm gonna. The Chargers have to be on this list because I saw something about how hot and bothered they were during the season in pursuit of Metcalf.
Okay, you're right.
I'm gonna guess because of their receiver room and the news today about Tank Dell having ACL surgery that the Houston Texans are higher than the Bills on this list.
They are 7th, 12-1.
Okay. Who else?
The second favorite is lately constantly being rumored to be interested in the big receivers because they have none.
They have none.
Kinda.
Who has none?
Huh. New England.
Oh, okay. Sure. Yes, thank you. Give me the rest of the list. I don't want. I'm going to take too long. I'm taking it way too seriously. Is Pittsburgh on the list?
Yes.
Okay.
Ayuk also with New England today. I saw.
Right. Yep.
And we're back to him.
Yeah.
He gets the big contract after all that drama last year. Gets hurt and now we're going to do it again. We're going to have the same conversations. The Raiders and Dallas are the other two.
Dallas, of course, Dallas.
Of course.
Dallas. They give a gajillion dollars to CeeDee Lamb last year, but sure. They opened up room today, right? They did something with Prescott's contract, so they've got a little more money to play with. And they'd be a lot more money to play with.
And Lamb, it's like $56 million together.
Yeah, total, yeah. Am I a jerk if I see a headline at ESPN.com that is worded, Cowboys rework Dak, add $36.6 million to cap? If I read that and think that means they did the opposite of whatever.
No, I agree with you.
That's a terrible headline.
Cap room.
Yeah. Create room. Like you don't write that like that. I don't know. I don't add money. No, they didn't add money. They took money off their cap. They added money they can spend, but I don't know. It's just a sloppy headline. Everything's going to hell.
I used to take a lot of pride in my headline writing.
Yeah.
When I was a newspaper guy.
Do you know how often? I'll just squeeze this in and we can move on to things that are more pertinent. But
what could be more important than this?
How often I read a story about a baseball player, for any player on any team in any team sport that I'm interested in, that talks about their contract, some squabble they're having with the team. He might be available. They might want to move him. He might want to be moved, and it doesn't include the player's age.
I remember you saying this bothered you.
10 paragraphs about it, and nowhere. And I got to Google, and I make a habit of I'll read it again because I don't want to get mad, preemptively. I want to make sure it's not an attention span problem on my end. It happens all the time. Put the guy's age in there, for Christ's sake. Anybody reading that's going to want to know how old the guy is. It's not.
Doesn't take up a lot of space or time.
Yeah, all you need is a comma, age 27, comma. Keep going. It's not that hard.
You don't even really technically need the word age.
No, just exactly. It's so
even shorter.
You can tell. I didn't mean to reach the level I'm reaching about this, but it really drives me crazy. I'm done now.
I want to say the one thing, I'm sure. When it was more recent in my life, there were certain headlines that I wrote that I would remember thinking were good, but now only a couple. But what I was in a conversation recently about this, how I remember one editor. So Bruce Smith was on the Bills when I worked toward the end of his career, when I worked at the Democrat and Chronicle, and we were told not to use Bruce in a headline by itself because she said that there's a racial component where with black players, we tend to use their first names instead of their last names. And so she had a rule not to do that, which made sense. And I have always sort of agreed with that, paying attention to it, noticing it, all the time. And women. In the tennis heyday back then, it was Sampras and Agassi and Becker, but it was Chrissy and Martina and Steffi. So women and black players just try not to do that. So we did, we adhered to that, but the guys would always sort of, make fun of how we would write Bills Smith. Which, who's actually saying that?
Right.
And I'm sure to lots of readers that just looked ridiculous. Bills Smith. Has anybody ever said Bills Smith?
Right.
At least Bills is pretty short in a headline because, But can't we just please write Bruce? Can't we make him the one? Yeah. Bills Thomas, even, instead of just Thurman.
Right.
But Bruce Smith was the best example of that. Bills Smith.
Could you not just go with Bruce Smith?
Well, you would never do that either. You would never write the full name in the headline, right? Nobody does that.
That's right. That's right. Anyway, one or the other. All right.
Bills Smith.
Well, our TED Talk about journalism is over now.
And then we would have these little, over the years, these little
it's not.
graphics. No, it's not quite. These little graphics and these little inserts in the article where it would be Bill's report or something. Bills would pop out, and if we used that, we weren't allowed to use Bills in the headline at all because it would be Bills.
Right.
You don't need that. So then it'd just be Smith. Maybe that was better, but okay, now it's over. Now I'm done.
All right.
Who is the Bills player most likely to be released? Is it Von Miller? You've got these Tyler Lockett today.
Yep.
This is the time of year. So is it Von Miller?
I think so. I badly want it to be. I just don't. I don't even want to kick the can down the road. And, I admire that he took the pay cut he took to stay here. He didn't have to do that last year. Maybe he did. Maybe he would have been cut last year, but that would have hurt a lot. I think so. Yes. There are other guys. I would expect them to want to do something to Milano's contract but I don't think cutting him is a great idea. There's a case to be made with the injuries he's had. That's part of the reason why I'd like to adjust the contract. But I think he showed when he came back late this season, he sort of got back to being the player he's been mostly. Miller, I appreciate that he won a lot of his reps and everything, but it's big money, and I need to get better there is what I need to do. And I'm not going to get better if I'm giving 40% of the snaps to him and congratulating him for winning his reps. I know that leads to pressures, and that should lead to sacks, and but there's not production there. I think at his age, he should be, and I hope he is, like the candidate.
It's a pretty tough dead cap hit, but you got to do it.
Yep.
He'll be 36, and you're big on the age. He'll be 36 3 weeks from today.
Right.
By the way.
Right. Now am I going to be self-conscious about making sure I always mention players' ages when we're talking about them? I might be. That's right.
Or I might just be like what I just was, which was sort of noticing that you didn't. Right. Making sure one of us does it.
Right.
That's really what just happened.
Yeah. But yeah, I think what do you think about him?
Yeah, sure. I think that makes sense. They need to make room. And you can restructure Allen and do a couple other things, but they've got important players that will be up in a year. They've got needs, and they're over. So, got to do something.
Right.
And that dead cap number will sting, but it's still better off than, what you're paying them to stay.
Right.
What the number would be that way. So, yeah, I would think that could happen. And I don't know who else I would think is, expected to be cut. I mean, Daquan Jones?
Yes. I also think that's a yes for me.
There'll be some savings there.
Yes, and that's a guy that to me also has not been really the same player since he tore his pectoral in that same game where Milano got hurt in London, right? Both of them got hurt in that same game that year. And that's the main reason why, to me, I'm thinking about Kenneth Grant from Michigan or whomever, like some 320-pound dude to plop next to Ed Oliver and just fill that role. Because I think they have been missing that. Jones was playing so well when that season was just getting off the ground. The first 4 games of that year, he was one of the best players at that position, that style player, defensive tackle, in the league. And it just has not been the same. And at his age right now and the savings, I would think you got to try to pivot to something else there.
Big takeaway from the playoff loss to Cincinnati was his absence in that game. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here. I'll get you the Chiefs thing.
Okay, thank you.
On Metcalf. Would love to hear from fans on the DK Metcalf idea. Is that something you want? Is that something you'd expect the Bills to want to pursue? Back after a break, Mike Schopp and the Bulldog, WGR.
More of Schopp and the Bulldog
Red Sox, which technically is correct because we talked about it was about the 2004 Red Sox. Those are still your Red Sox.
I was still in the throes of it. Yes.
Got my book today.
We're talking about defense here and its importance, and how in 2004 the Red Sox divested themselves of one of the best offensive shortstops of the era, Nomar Garciaparra, and replaced him with Orlando Cabrera and added Doug Minkiewicz and Pokey Reese, and they stopped kicking the ball all over the field, and go figure, they won the World Series.
Nomar went to L.A., right?
Eventually. I don't know if that was where he went immediately. I can't, because it's all, they were separate transactions. The Cabrera, I think, came from the Angels.
Cubs.
Okay. And Minnesota was where Minkiewicz came from, but that was a separate trade. So I don't know.
Cubs.
I think they made separate deals. I don't think they were all intertwined.
No, I'm sure you're right, but I'm just trying to remember that.
Yeah.
Nomar on the Cubs for 2 years or a year and a half. Then the Dodgers and then Oakland. That's his Pat Quinn coaching the Oilers season.
Right.
Was when Nomar played for Oakland.
And boy, did they ever get out at the right time.
Boston?
Yeah.
Yeah, he had injuries.
He was never the same player he was at his peak. I mean, who is the same at the peak, but it declined quickly.
So I said a minute ago, I'm sure you're right, just to sort of move on. It was a 4-team trade that included both players.
Okay. Angels, Twins, Cubs, Red Sox? Am I right?
Expos, not Angels.
Expos.
The Expos had Cabrera.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the Twins had Minkiewicz, which you said.
How the heck did he get to Montreal? Because I remember him...
Orlando Cabrera?
Yeah, wasn't he the Angels shortstop on the team that won in 2002?
No.
Boy, I thought he was.
What was Eckstein?
Gosh. Yeah, I remember that player, but I remember him as a second baseman.
Who's the 0-2 Angel shortstop?
Boy, I thought for sure it was Cabrera.
He was Montreal for a long time.
Okay.
And then Boston, and then immediately to L.A. Only that 1 year for Boston. And then the White Sox and the A's and the Twins and the Reds and the then Indians and the Giants.
Never the Angels. Wow.
No, it was the Angels.
Oh, okay.
He went from the Red Sox to the Angels.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry about all that.
That's one of my all-time favorite teams, the 0-2 Angels. It's legendary year going out with Brad after his show, like late night baseball watching at a bar and betting on them and winning constantly. if you run up to Brad, walk up to Brad Wright or anybody and say Angels in the over, you'll know exactly what that meant. And same with me, Angels in the over had a ring to it. Eckstein, the shortstop of the 0-2 Angels, at least I remembered that one right.
Okay.
What a fun team.
Did he later play second base for St. Louis?
Maybe,
Eckstein?
Sounds right.
Okay. Anyway, yeah. I think the Red Sox pivoted to Edgar Renteria after Cabrera, after they won that World Series, and that didn't go great.
Remembering some names here.
It's been a minute. Yeah.
Love it. I got my book.
I'm not sure it's all right, but Renteria definitely was there. I don't know how long, but I think in my head they pivoted from Cabrera to him, I think, after they won.
Baseball prospectus. It's my weekend of drafts. National League on Saturday, AL on Sunday, down in the Philadelphia area, and then Jersey. I take the book everywhere. I mentioned it. It's been in here. Yesterday, I left and forgot it and came back to get it because I knew I would, like every night I'm reading it. And I did take it into a restaurant yesterday.
Okay.
But I never opened it. I guess I thought, I'm just going to read while I'm waiting for my food. And
sure.
I just was on my phone and didn't end up using the book at all. But I was a little bit self-conscious walking into a restaurant alone with a big baseball prospectus here under my arm.
I want to tell you that you shouldn't have been.
Okay.
But, I mean, you got to manage your own emotions.
Yes. So DK Metcalf might be available should the Bills pounce. 803-0550. We'll get back to that after sports. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog, WGR.
Call or text WGR at
Busy day in the sports world. We'll start with the NFL and specifically the Las Vegas Raiders as they make edge rusher Max Crosby the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. It is a 3-year, $106.5 million extension that does include $91.5 million guaranteed. The Raiders also signed offensive lineman Alex Kappa to a 2-year, $11.2 million deal. The Eagles continue to hand out extensions following their Super Bowl win yesterday with Saquon Barkley. Today, All-Pro linebacker Zach Bond. 3 years, $51 million deal, $34 million of that guaranteed. And then the Seahawks, they are expected to look very different next season, specifically on offense. Wide receiver Tyler Lockett released after 10 seasons with the club, while fellow wide receiver DK Metcalf has requested a trade. And for Metcalf, he does have 1 year remaining on his current deal. To the Sabres, they did lose last night, making it 4 in a row. They'll be back at it tomorrow on the road versus the Lightning. Multiple reports, though, do have the Sabres and forward Jordan Greenway finalizing a 2-year extension with an average annual value of $4 million, though nothing official yet from the team. And then the New Jersey Devils, they announced in the last half hour or so that forward Jack Hughes had shoulder surgery. He will be out the remainder of the season. The hope is he'll make a full recovery for training camp next season. And then in college hoops, massive game in the MAC. UB women on the road versus the number 1 team in the MAC currently, Ball State at 6:30. That'll be on our sister station, The Bet 1520. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of business. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
We were having a very serious conversation about mayonnaise here.
And the Bulldog
And don't even talk to me about weed.
on WGR Sports Radio 550.
Welcome back. A lot of fun football speculation today. And just what might the Bills be in on? Okay, maybe not Devontae Adams. Maybe not. You shot that right down.
I have seen estimates at what his what he might get paid. This is a lot more appealing than I thought it would be, even at his age.
Because
it's about
much older.
It's about half of what I might have thought. Like it's really like 2 years, $27 million is something that I saw.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, all right, I'd do that. I mean,
Do I have to sign Rodgers and maybe not play him? Like, do I have to?
Right.
Is that good enough for these two?
Just make him general manager. He would like that probably.
Actually, remember, speaking of that, Von Miller talked about wanting to get into that after he was done playing. Wonder where that stands.
Yeah. But
I don't think Adams is a serious idea for the Bills. He wants to play with Rodgers,
right?
But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's good enough.
Yeah, I think he still is good enough. And if it that's the cost. Like if that's realistic, I'd be all right with that. Honestly,
these older guys, they end up moving inside. Like that's what happened to Adams. 48%. I read from or heard from Denny Carter at RotoWorld. 48% of his Jets snaps were from the slot. And you've had that with Diggs. You had that with Christian Kirk. I mean, he's not as old, but we talked about him for a minute. And maybe he's an interesting Bills idea, too. But they really don't have an opening. You're not moving Shakir.
No,
right?
not especially now.
Especially now. And I don't mean like moving off the team. I mean just like moving out wide.
Right. Yeah.
And Kincaid also complicates that. So many of the good, like Lamb and St. Brown, I mean, there are guys that are elite players who make it happen from the slot. But the Bills really just don't have.
It's almost all they have.
Need. Yeah, they have. The rest.
Even Coleman, like I remember talking to analysts after the pick. Like he's actually a great big slot candidate, but the Bills aren't going to use him that way because they've got these other guys squatting on it already.
They immediately said when they drafted him,
right outside.
So,
and like Metcalf is not at that point in his career to me. Like he is still a bona fide outside guy, and I'm intrigued. I mean, I really, I recognize that Garrett, for me, like in a all things being equal, we're looking at the board. What do I want to do? What's more urgent? Like the Bills' offense was far less of a problem for them last year than their defense was, and how can I impact that? What's the quickest way to change it? Get a freak show on that side of the ball, and who's available? Okay, this defensive end, defensive player of the year, 1 year removed, still in prime of his career. Okay, that is my priority. I'm not sure it lines up. I mean, I think the Browns will eventually move him. I think they will be eventually forced to move him, but that might not, the way they're talking, that might not come to a head until July. And I'm not in the business of sitting around waiting for that. Unless I know it's going to happen or something, then I would hold back. But I don't think that that's the way that will work. So I could use another receiver. DK Metcalf is almost custom made for what they are seeking. It's speed, it's size, and it's someone who can beat you in a variety of ways. I take to heart what Chris Trapasso told us last hour. He's not an artist. He's not a technician as far as the route running goes. But the speed and the size, it works, I think. And I don't know, like seeing Ben Volin say, watch out for the Bills in this. I don't know if he's just like us, the Bills could use a receiver like that.
Doubt it.
Or if he's got some reason from Indianapolis or something else, some intel that leads him to think the Bills are a team to watch in this, that gets your attention. You can choose to ignore it if you want, but it gets I think it gets your attention. So,
yes,
I think what we're doing here is we're sitting with this idea and we're talking about this idea because it's a big move. It doesn't cost you asset-wise what a Garrett trade would cost you. I think at most it costs you a first-round pick, at most. Maybe not even that.
How would you feel if it was that? There are players, like Garrett is a version of a player where a lot of people, I'm sure this isn't how the actual general manager looks at it, but whatever it costs, just tell me what it costs, I'll pay it.
Right.
And Metcalf, I don't really think needs to be that.
No. But I think it's a premium asset and something else. So what is that premium asset? It's at least a second, and I've got two of those. And that sort of buffers if it ends up having to be 30, because whatever, it's a swap meet, right? I got to win the bidding here. Other teams are going to be interested in this as well. So if it gets to that, having the 2 seconds buffers it. I throw in a fourth or something. Okay. Like I'm not walking away from that, I don't think. Myself. I think I would do that. 30 and a fourth. I don't think I would want to give up like Coleman in a second, say. Like I feel like Coleman takes the place of the premium asset. So if for some reason, I only mentioned Coleman because it came up in the first hour of our show, and the Bills have, sounded the alarm to an extent about Coleman. Like they're trying to send messages publicly about him, and I'm sure in private it's even sterner what they're trying to get across to him. So if they're disillusioned with his just how he handled last year enough to want to make a move, I mean, Metcalf replaces him on the field. Like there's your outside receiver.
I think it would be a huge move. I mean, you're saying the same.
Yeah, I would like to have both of them. Because Metcalf should make everybody else's life easier, and that includes Coleman.
My opinion, similar to yours, just picture this team with him on it, lining up. Now we're talking. And I know they just had a very good season on offense, and their defense is in rougher shape. And that might be all of it. That might be just like, yeah, we really don't want to do that or can't afford it, whatever you'd say. But just, it's the whole radio station on a daily basis or an annual basis, like just the alpha wide receiver. And they had it with Diggs, and it was glorious, and it got bad. They made the trade. It was controversial, and they looked good for doing it. They still won the AFC East. They still made the AFC Championship. They scored 29 points in that game. Was that the number? So, it it was a success. Trading Diggs and, moving on from Davis, all of it put together was successful. So part of the conversation is, if they think that, would they really even contemplate a trade like this? And I've decided that I think they would.
Yeah. I still think you can trace their desire to make the move they did in season for Amari Cooper to some recognition that everybody eats, no Diggs, no kingpin guy, it wasn't enough. And so, Metcalf is not at the point of his career that Cooper was at. I didn't expect Cooper to be as, I don't know, sort of not impressive, really. It didn't really do much. But the offense really worked. And so having a guy with that reputation even, I think, was of some value. At least, I think you can at least say that. It doesn't have to be right. You could probably poke a million holes in it if you wanted. But they recognized that they didn't have enough, is really the point. So for all the talk about everybody eats and all the success, and Cooper not smashing can even push you further in that direction, but they got him for a reason. They recognized the shortcoming in their planning or just a lack of availability of something that they thought could work. And so they talked up the everybody eats thing and then eventually went and traded for what was supposed to be a number one wide receiver. So here we are now. I've thought all off season, sure, everybody eats, it worked. How heavily am I going to invest in receiver? Well, they're going to need to replace Cooper. And why not go to the top of that rather than just hope you find, the scratch and dent aisle like they tried before they made the Cooper move. They tried a bunch of different guys that had varying degrees of success in the league, and none of it really took and worked. And eventually they made the move for Cooper. Well, I still have to replace his spot. And to me, Coleman, there's no way, to me, you could sell me on their betting on Coleman emerging. The way they're talking about him, they may want that to happen eventually, but that's not a bet they sound ready to make at all at this point. So,
it makes for a really interesting conversation, like whether they would want to swing big like this, and they might. They might not. Like all the stuff about how many points they scored and how it went overall without getting much from Cooper. And like a lot of these different facets of this, the Amari Cooper point can be looked at either way. They were not throwing the ball before they traded for him. Like, it wasn't much. The first 6 games, I think they were over 200 passing yards twice in the first 6 games. And it was 3 in a row, Baltimore, Houston, Jets, where they beat the Jets, but where it really wasn't shining. And then Cooper comes in, and they had a lot more success from there to the end of the season, even though it wasn't like a lot through him. What do I mean by looking at that either way? You could give him some credit for that, more than his numbers would suggest. I might start instead with, who did they play? Like, they played some teams, even the Lions, when they got to that part of the schedule, that were just in shambles on defense.
232 against Arizona, 139 against Miami, a game they easily won and were ahead all day.
Right.
Jacksonville, 263. They came out throwing in that game and then took their foot off the gas because, again, it was a blowout. Then the Baltimore game, the Houston game, 180, 131. And then
131.
That's the Houston game, yeah. And then 215, 323, Tennessee, and they kind of went off to the races from there.
Man, I got to see that Houston game again. And that's with Coleman, like, breaking one against Houston.
Yeah.
A short pass or medium.
Allen's day in that Houston game was, I think the worst day of his career. 9 for 30.
And 131.
9 for 30. Oh my gosh.
How? I don't remember how.
It's so bad. So anyway, they made the move. It doesn't have to matter that Cooper didn't put up big numbers. They thought they had a need, and I think that same need is still evident. There's no way you could tell me re-signing Mac Hollins and keeping, hoping that Samuel is healthy and re-signing Shakir and having Coleman going into year 2 like I'm all set at receiver. No, you're not.
Has an MVP ever had a 9 for 30 game? News Radio 9 for 30. That is shocking to look at. I mentioned earlier, so talking about the Garrett idea and Metcalf, like which is your favorite? Garrett would probably be more expensive. I looked at it as somebody, like as a Chiefs fan might do. And my opinion is Myles Garrett goes to the Bills, okay, but I'm still going to score. Like, the Bills have done a lot to try to transform their defense and get to a point where when it matters in January, they can stop Mahomes. They've never done it 4 times. Go ahead. Bring on Myles Garrett. Go ahead. And Metcalf, however, for me, and this is, of course, coming from like how I feel about the two players and the whole thing, would be like, okay, wow, that is a game changer playing against that. Because, I mean, has it not been correct for a few years thinking it's going to be about my offense? Mm-hmm. And the top quarterbacks are going to get theirs. And we're still there in the NFL, even though this was a year where some of the numbers came down. Those were like some of the top teams. So I still think, the bottom line is going to be offense. I did reach out to Alex Gold in Kansas City to see what he would say. Like, how would you react to the Bills getting either of these two players? Either as yourself or as, what the fans might say, in your opinion, radio host in Kansas City. And he took my Metcalf question as if the Chiefs were getting him. He didn't really give me much from, like, the Bills getting Metcalf. Uh-huh. But he did say Garrett, of the two, signing Garrett would be a bigger deal against the Chiefs, in his opinion. So there you go. Chiefs fans, he also said, have wanted Metcalf for years. But I think that softened a little. And with Rice and Worthy, they don't need to be giving $30 million a year to a wide receiver.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
Which, that's what it would be.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's got 17 or something left on a contract, 1 year. I don't think it's guaranteed. He's getting a new deal wherever he gets traded. That's a part of it. I think that's even part of the reporting, is that he will expect that or is seeking that. So, you've got to pay the price to acquire him, and then you're right back to the top of the market at receiver. I don't know that he comes in as the highest paid receiver with a new contract, but I think he'd be close. That's usually how it works. Like, you get a guy of that, that stature, you're going to give him a new deal, at least for a minute anyway. And it might get blown out of the water. If this trade happens, between now and Wednesday or something, or, early on in free agency.
Good.
Maybe, although, I don't know, with the free agent class, maybe nobody approaches that. It's part of the reason why Metcalf is such a desirable commodity if he's really on the market. Like, Seattle seems agreeable to at least explore it, and Metcalf wants it. So he's on the market. He's the top of the class, and it's not even close. Even with Christian Kirk's a nice player. And he's very good friends with Josh Allen, like very good friends to the extent that if you see a picture of them at this indoor Tiger Woods golf thing last night, Josh's bachelor party, in the photo of like 8 guys, Christian Kirk is the dude smiling right next to Josh with his arms around him. Like they're standing like that. But he's a slot, and we just talked about that. All I've got is slot guys.
How was that idea for a bachelor party? Going to the whatever it's called, golf, the fake golf.
TGL, I think it's what it's called. I think it's pretty solid.
You're going to be able to interact with the players.
Oh, yeah, they were heckling guys. Like, they had a time. I think it's a good stop on a bachelor party. I'm being,
absolute premium level of bachelor parties.
I'm going to watch some, I've tried it. I've decided I'm done watching it on TV. I just don't, it doesn't work for me watching it on TV, but seeing it in person, those guys that close to them, they're not walking a golf course, they're there. That could be kind of cool watching them hit shots.
Sure, yeah.
So,
where do they have it?
It's in, Florida, California? One of the two. I cannot remember. I think Florida.
Okay.
But don't quote me. It's one of the two. They built this stadium indoors for them to. This is a lot of money there. This is really what it is.
It looks like it.
The whole thing is but answer your question, I think it's a really cool bachelor party outing.
I guess I agree. the absolute just top tier of bachelor party. Anything is the world is your oyster, right? Like,
right.
Must be nice.
Darnold was there too.
Really?
He was a part of the group. Yeah, Sam Darnold.
Zach is next. Hello, Zach.
Hi, guys. Look, I'd be ecstatic for them to get Garrett. I was all in on that beforehand when I felt like getting somebody like Metcalf was a total pipe dream. But now that the possibility is here, like, I'm all in on that instead. And I know they're totally different positions, obviously, but the offense to me feels like they might be one player away from being excellent. And, they got by last year, and, I mean, to say they got by seems like a negative on my end. But and it doesn't feel sustainable to me if they want to run back what they did last year, unless you think that Kincaid or Coleman is just going to pop. And I'm not super certain on that personally. Nobody is, I guess. I don't know. I pictured Metcalf in that Bills jersey, like you said, Mike, lining up, and I'm just like, how do you not want that? And it's just, the defense to me, not that this isn't an argument against getting Garrett, to me it seems that there's multiple places they have to fix on the defense. And what you have to spend to get Garrett as far as trade assets, and I don't know the money on that thing. I'm not good with the salary cap stuff, but I don't know. Metcalf just seems so much more attainable, and then draft your defense, I guess, and just fill it out with some guys in free agency. It just seems way smarter to me.
It is fair to point out here, thank you for the call, that the defense is carrying this draft. Like, there's a lot of what the Bills should be, I think, what we suspect they'll be looking for, available in the draft. There are not a lot of receivers available in the draft. I mean, as I say, they couldn't find one, but it's not a deep class for that. So that lines up. The money is pretty comparable. I mean, it's Garrett's going to go to, well, what did Crosby get today? He went in above whoever was holding the place down, one of the Bosas, I think. Anyway,
one of the Bosas.
35 plus million a year is what you're looking at for Garrett. The acquisition price is 2 premium assets, maybe even 3. Like a 1, and a 2, or 1, and a 3. It's a lot. A 1, and Rousseau is what I've had in my head for Garrett. You're not going to pay that much for Metcalf, but the money's going to be close enough. I mean, it's going to be $30 million a year.
And it's going to be for several years. You're going to marry this guy. Speaking of bachelor parties, you're making that decision not just for 1 year, but do we want this player to be a part of our core here for the foreseeable future? And that answer very well might be yes. I think with Brandon Beane, I think he's earned this. The logical instinct that I have when it comes to, like, all right, so would the Bills do something? I tend to start at, they've drafted Coleman, so they're going to try to see that through. They drafted Kincaid, they're going to try to see that through. To make an extra effort, if you will, to make your draft picks work. Because that, I think, looks best on the organization and the GM individually. But I think, having said that, what is the compliment? The compliment for Beane is, I don't think he would have to be slow on that kind of stuff, or he'd have to be married to his picks, so to speak. I feel like he has shown he can be aggressive. And if they don't like what they saw from Keon Coleman as a rookie, is it out of the question that they would move him? I don't think it's out of the question. It wouldn't. I mean, it would be pretty surprising. It's possible, though, depending on just what the level of dissatisfaction was and what his value might be to someone else. One of his better games was in Seattle. You have 2 fourths. The Seahawks do not have a fourth. This is coming together for me.
Okay.
And you wouldn't trade, did you say, Coleman for Metcalf straight up?
Oh, no, of course I would.
You would?
What I said was, I don't want to give up Coleman and a 1, or Coleman and a 2. Like, Coleman, I made a crack about driving the car off the lot and depreciation. I don't, Coleman is not a throw-in in the deal to me. Mm-hmm. If Seattle likes him, then that takes the place of something important for me. I don't want to give up both of those things.
I understand. The first rumor on Metcalf was with the Packers. and that was a first and a young receiver, and they have a few, and the Bills have one.
Yep.
That would be maybe worth talking about there. Lines are open for your thoughts, 803-0550. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here, WGR.
The Las Vegas Raiders get edge rusher Max Crosby. Done deal, signed and delivered for them. 3 years, $106.5 million extension, $91.5 million of that guaranteed, and he is now the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. The Raiders also signed offensive lineman Alex Kappa to a 2-year, $11.2 million deal. Seattle is expected to look very different next year. Wide receiver Tyler Lockett released after 10 seasons with the team, while fellow wide receiver DK Metcalf has requested a trade. And for Metcalf, he does have just 1 year remaining on his current deal. And then to the Sabres, it is 4 losses in a row, but they'll be back tomorrow on the road versus the Lightning. Multiple reports, though, do have the Sabres and forward Jordan Greenway finalizing a 2-year extension with an average annual value of $4 million, though nothing official from the team as of yet. New Jersey also announced today forward Jack Hughes, he will have shoulder surgery. He is going to be out for the rest of the season. The hope now is that he'll be ready to go for training camp next season. And then in college hoops, massive game in the MAC. UB women on the road versus Ball State at 6:30. And that will be on our sister station, The Bet 1520. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of business. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
As well as we skated last night, it looked like there was fatigue in our game. You have no legs, you have no hands, and then you have no brain after that. We gave up goals on face-off coverage. We gave up goals on just over back checking. Our puck play 3 times led to goals. Just breaking out a puck, hitting a stick. You look at some of the plays in the first period, handed them a couple pucks where UPL had to make great saves just inside of our blue line. Our puck play was pathetic.
Oh no, poor Joe. He has no hands. Thank you. One of my favorites.
Don't know it. Sorry.
Dave. You've seen it, I hope? Dave? Political movie. Not to get political. Dave.
Yeah. No, I'm familiar, right? It's Kevin Kline as the president.
Kevin Kline.
Yeah.
Who's good in everything.
Yeah, he's excellent. I think I saw. I don't know. It didn't leave him.
He's got the power. That's why he's in the shower. Not even that stayed with you.
I love. If you are ever asked by, like, I had a waiter ask me this one time. I was on a hockey tour with Owen, and as we were paying the bill, the guy had been really nice, friendly, we're interacting. He says, as he's getting ready to leave the table for the last time, "What's your superpower?" I think your answer should be to quote movies no one remembers.
Oh, that's out of line. That is out of line. Where's my Dave Hive? Come on out there. I mean, 2 of you have been good enough to call our show today. Where's that Dave Hive? It's true that I have not seen a movie in 30 years, but the ones that I liked, I really liked.
Yeah. My answer, by the way, to that waiter was something along the lines of, my superpower is the ability to overreact to things that mean almost nothing.
It should be something good.
Well, my superpower is being self-deprecating. How's that?
Mine is not knowing what mine is. I'd have to think about it, but I'm going to take that as a compliment, actually. Everybody can quote the most famous movies. Dave is very quotable. Great cast. Sigourney Weaver. Do you enjoy Sigourney Weaver's work? The late Charles Grodin.
Sure. When she like, I think does she end up being Zool or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean what a powerhouse.
Alien has to be her first movie, right? Not Dave. Is anybody's first movie Dave?
No.
Ving Rhames, Charles Grodin.
No.
Some other people. Anna Devere Smith, I believe. That might be American President. Which is also, wait, next time you make a crack like that, I'm coming at you with that movie.
All right. You can go ahead. Nobody's going to know what the hell you're talking about.
That's a
just
threat.
So you know.
Sure. That nobody's ever seen any of these. Nobody's ever seen Fletch. They've only ever seen, Animal House and Caddyshack. Those are the only movies.
And
the Blues Brothers. That's right. If it's not the Blues Brothers, it's nothing. But Lindy, pretty harsh there.
Yeah, pathetic. That's harsh. Is what.
But
that
if
is.
you say we're tired at first, then you start sort of maybe making an excuse, not to say he'd be wrong.
Yeah. I didn't get too much. I mean, Thompson said something to the effect of, Yeah, that's the schedule. Everybody, they did it. We did. I didn't get a lot of. We were tired last night. I got. I don't know what.
We're terrible.
Right.
We want to leave. We're done.
We're terrible. Yes. Right.
Get us out of here.
Right. Don't look like Jordan Greenway is going anywhere. We don't have anything official on that yet, and we're hoping to talk to Paul in about half an hour here, and I doubt he'll have anything official. He's been on a plane during the entirety of our show, basically. But there's a lot of reporting that is done, and it's 2 years, about $4 million, an extension for Greenway, and I'm totally fine here. That was a guy that I would have hoped that they would hang on to. Can attract players to come here. He's here. He must like it here. I would think he would have some kind of market, both on the trade market now, like Friday, and then next year. So I'm happy about that. Happy's too strong.
Happy is too strong.
I'm fine.
I'm fine. You're fine. Yeah.
I'm fine.
You can have it.
I'm fine.
You can have it.
Yep.
I'm just so unmoved by anything pertaining to them. Like I said yesterday, I fully expect whatever happens this week to be a disappointment, which is an awful way to be. It's like a very depressing story, what has happened to the Sabres, who were beloved here. And it's just become like unplayable. It's an unplayable lie, You want to keep your guys because they're okay with it. You want to sign, average players because they don't insist upon leaving. Okay, how are you going to be different next year? I mean, you're going to run out the same team? Can't do that. Another season went by, nothing was done about it. Year after year. Well, we have this flaw, this challenge, this injury. Nothing is done about it. There was one trade with minor league guys, I think, that I remember.
Yeah.
But nothing else. Just like,
No, there's not been since July. I saw today, July 5th was the last time they made an addition to the roster.
July 5th.
July 5th. Yeah.
That's amazing.
That is also, what was Lindy's word? Pathetic.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
All of it is amazing, kind of.
Yeah.
You have Bills night. You don't have any Bills there.
Right.
It's just like, what was the point of that? My buddy's like, I got a towel.
Right.
What do you do with the towel?
McDermott got to drive a Zamboni. Okay.
Nice for him.
They had Slick Rick there, the mailroom guy that Josh shouted out, banging the drum before the game. I guess George Wilson was
what's that about?
Doing,
I saw that.
And they, Brownie and Tasker were there, and like, that's nice. They cut to a shot. Did you see it? They cut to a shot of Steve coming out of a commercial. He's got his head down. He's jamming a hot dog in his mouth. And you never even really see his face. Like, he looks up enough. Like, I know it's him. I trust that it's him. And it's funny. They have a thing on that show about him. Like, they'll show this highlight of him eating a burrito during a commercial break that's, sped up, and it's funny. But it was just amazing. They cut to Steve jamming this hot dog in his mouth. Anyway.
Bill's night.
Yeah, Bill's night. Yeah.
What's the George Wilson stuff? Is he trying to get
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how that came about.
He was a nice player.
Yeah.
I liked his jacket last night.
I didn't.
He had a big, cool jacket on.
Yeah, I never saw him. I heard that he was doing a lot of the contests and stuff on the new Jumbotron.
Here's Michael with us. Hi, Michael.
Hi, how are you?
Fantastic.
Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yep.
I want to say that I believe that we should get rid of James Cook, trade him. I really believe he's going to be considered a cancer on this team, just like Devin, his brother. But I also love the fact that you guys are talking about Metcalf because he'd be great for the Bills as a contested catcher on the sidelines. But my biggest thing is we should restructure Josh's contract.
Well, I fully. I don't know about even restructuring. I think they're going to tear it up and give him a new contract. Is what's going to happen, and the cap hits will be lower for the first few years of it, and void years and all the stuff that's going around that's in vogue in the league now. So they'll make that work. Delvin is the name you want. That's Cook's older brother, who had his own contract squabbles in his time in the league.
Would anybody, one teammate of his, call him a cancer for doing that?
Absolutely not. And I don't think a one team in the league gets in line to trade for a running back who's seeking a $15 million a year contract either. So you're in a pretty interesting spot. This is an important player to your team. He tied the franchise record for rushing touchdowns in a single season last year. The leading pass catcher touchdown-wise was Mac Hollins with 5. Cook had 16 rushing touchdowns, 2 more receiving if you want it, by the way. So he accounted for 18 touchdowns. So he is important. I don't think trading him is a good idea at all. I would sooner see them if they can't get anywhere, because I think they like this player. They certainly haven't reacted publicly anyway, Bean and McDermott, negatively to the social media campaign that Cook has been engaged in about the contract. So I think they'd like to do something. If they can't, he's under contract for another year. They don't have to do anything. I think, again, you'd like to reward your player for working like he's worked and all this stuff that goes with that. But I don't, cancer.
It's unbelievable. Players do not resent teammates who try to get paid. They just never do. They're also trying to get paid. They're in that together. And it is, I think, highly unlikely, and to me kind of crazy to predict, that gets to a point where he would be resented. Like, what would that be? What would that even be? You're the one, every time, like when it comes to money, there's some fans who they will turn on you so hard, and there's a guy right there where that's already happened with James Cook, because why?
He wants to be paid. The market rate is changing for running backs, and he wants his piece. It's his time.
And it's March 5th.
Yeah.
That's Metcalf, who the caller wants, too. He's a year away from a new contract, just like Cook, and apparently wants to see that through on a different team. I mean, maybe there'd be such a demand for him that's like a good that's a logical strategy for him. Open me up to the league, and there's a bidding war, and whoever's going to trade Seattle, what they would take for DK Metcalf is going to pay Metcalf the biggest contract you've ever seen. Well, is he a cancer? It's ridiculous. Getting connected with the fans, brought to you by Northtown Kia, Western New York's #1 Kia dealer. Shop online at northtownkia.com. I'll tell you why I want DK Metcalf, so I can get it out of my head, this DK horse.
I want him because he wears number 14.
DK Horse is haunting me with, like, I get emails, notifications. I must have said yes. I must have said yes.
Oh, boy.
So who's running in the 5th at Aqueduct? This DK Horse. Sam, if you're out there. Sam tomorrow? Sammy P?
Sam is tomorrow. Yeah, we moved him from Friday. Yeah.
I want a different DK in my life than DK Horse. Maybe a bit of an overreaction, but still.
Maybe. 14.
14.
That'll work.
Who was the last Bill to wear 14?
Chase Claypool?
Incorrect.
Stephon Diggs?
Also incorrect.
I don't know then.
Mike White.
Get the hell out of here. Really?
Think so.
All right. Huh.
Week 18. Week 18.
All right.
I mean, you watched that game.
Not really.
Not that closely.
No.
We were kind of rooting for the Patriots.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was 14 for the Bills. 3 for 11 in that outing.
Good memory.
There you go out there tonight at dinner. Who's the last Bill to wear 14?
Well, that's
they don't.
Then you can't trade for Metcalf because Mike White has 14. That's the end of that.
Is he gone, though?
Can't believe this dream died like that so fast. Mike White, no. They signed him for an extra year.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, I remember that now.
I'm kind of rooting for him to be the backup instead of Trubisky. I don't like Trubisky at all. I don't know if Mike White is significantly better than Mitch Trubisky. It's probably a push, but I don't know. Trubisky, I have no faith that he will ever make a single play that will help me do anything that really needs to be done. I
was putting it one way.
When he was in Pittsburgh, he's just like, great. Yeah, he doesn't see it. Oh, it's out of bounds. I think he sucks.
Where did this come from?
He sucks.
Just some sudden Mitchell Trubisky anger.
Yeah.
Love it. It wasn't about the Sabres.
No.
That remains latent for today. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog at 803-0550. This is WGR. Hoping to talk to Paul Hamilton coming up at the top of the hour. He's had, sounds like, a couple of interesting travel days, but on his way to Tampa, if not there already. Sabres at Lightning tomorrow night. You've talked about how, like, today, yesterday, maybe it has just seems like it's always happening when you leave home, you get to work, and there's like all kinds of new news.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's partly a function of the time of year.
Yeah.
You know, with the combine, everybody's talking, and then now it's free agency. I thought of that today in terms of Metcalf because, you know, I'm not looking for credit, but as early as last night, I was writing stuff down for today, and I saw that the Raiders are going to let Gardner Minshew be a free agent, and I put that down as a free agent idea of the day.
All right.
I don't think it's a good one.
No.
We just had a conversation about backup quarterbacks. Is Minshew somebody anymore who could get a week one start?
No.
I mean, you know that some of the guys we have heard that may be in play, Tyrod Taylor, Daniel Jones, maybe guys that are not even on that level. Levis. I wonder if Minshew, Levis is a different situation, but if Minshew is somebody who is, we're done.
Yeah.
Indianapolis and then Vegas after kind of a fun start to his career in Jacksonville.
If he hadn't just been in Indianapolis, well, there's a stop in between, but still, he might be a guy to bring into compete, finger quotes, with Anthony Richardson, because you probably want Richardson to win that competition. But that's the best. Yeah, he's back up, and you know, I don't even think he's a guy you bring in to play in front of the guy you draft. Like if you draft somebody that's, you know, some team.
Sanders.
Sure. Or Milroe. They love Milroe. He's going to be a project, you know, so it's going to take time. We got to be patient. I think you want to do even better than Minshew. And it might be hard. So maybe, but I'd be very surprised. I got to stop short of shocked. Because there will probably be some pretty booty-looking quarterbacks starting week one this year.
Two nicknames, Mustache and Jockstrap King, Gardner Minshew. I mean, he's played 59 games in the league.
You're telling me that dude, with the flair he's got, the mustache, and all the stuff, he is the living embodiment of Uncle Rico. Like, he doesn't have that nickname.
He's not.
What are we?
Who's running the nickname department at Pro Football Reference?
What are we even doing here? We used to be a proper society. Let's get it together.
2 years in Philadelphia, by the way, that I did not think about. Remember, between Jacksonville and the Colts, he's been on 4 teams, and it's going to be 5. Somebody's going to hire him.
He'll have a job, sure. Yeah.
Made a Pro Bowl with the Colts.
All right.
Did.
Can't take that away from him.
I doubt he's played in the playoffs unless maybe for the Eagles as a, you know, to kneel it out or something. We'll hope to talk to Paul next. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here, WGR.
Call or text
It had been reported much of the afternoon, and it officially became official just a few moments ago. The Buffalo Sabres have signed forward Jordan Greenway to a 2-year extension with an average annual value of $4 million. Sabres are in Florida as they'll take on the Lightning tomorrow following their 4th straight loss last night. We'll get more on the signing of Greenway, the loss last night, and what's to come Friday for the deadline as Paul Hamilton joins the show next. Around the rest of the sports world, a very busy day from the NFL. The Raiders signed edge rusher Max Crosby to a 3-year, $106.5 million extension, a $91.5 million guarantee to go along with that. It does make him the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. The Eagles continued to hand out post-Super Bowl winning extensions. Yesterday was Saquon Barkley. Today, linebacker Zach Bond. 3 years, $51 million deal, $34 million of that guaranteed. And then Seattle, they are expected to look very different now on offense as wide receiver Tyler Lockett gets released after 10 seasons with the team. And then fellow wide receiver DK Metcalf requested a trade. And for Metcalf, he does have 1 year remaining on his current deal. And then in college hoops, massive game in the MAC. UB women on the road versus Ball State. 6:30 tip-off. That's in just about a half hour. And that'll be on our sister station, The Bet 1520. It's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of business. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Okay, welcome back. The Sabres news there. The Greenway contract has been made official. Paul Hamilton joins us from in or around Tampa. It sounds like you've had an interesting couple of days, Paul.
I made it. I've been doing some really cool traffic jams. The QEW last night there was an accident, so that of course was a standstill parking lot. And of course it's rush hour here in Tampa. So luckily the plane landed at 5, so I had an hour to get into the city, get ready to speak with you guys. And it took a while, but we got here. So we're hooked up, ready to go, and yeah.
And the QEW thing was preceded by train travel, which you did the last time the Sabres were in was that Ottawa or Montreal? It was Montreal.
It was Montreal.
And you did that again, and you got delayed going from Montreal back to Toronto, which is where you had gotten the train to begin with. So
right, yeah, that was awesome too. But and the thing is, once you're on a train, you can't make up time. It's not like an airplane that can make up some time in the air and that kind of thing. You're kind of stuck there. So, yeah, I was expecting to get home, shower, get ready for the game. I crossed the bridge about the time I was supposed to come on with you guys with the same suit, shirt, and everything on that I had the game before, the last night. So I wore that for, 48 hours or so. By the time I got done writing, I got home around 11. So, yeah, I had that on for more than 48 hours.
Good,
that was awesome.
Good to know that the Looney Tunes tie got a lot of extra time. We're happy for you, Paul. All right.
Did you mention it to people? Like, I would have been making sure everybody knew. Listen, there's a reason for this. If you care enough, and you probably don't, you care enough to have noticed that I'm wearing the same clothes as yesterday, this is why. I'd want to
from the media, Heather and Lance would have been the only two that had seen me, and of course, Chris Durkin from the Sabres. So there weren't too many people from the media that knew how I had dressed the day before. But, yeah, I actually told people, like I'm telling you and telling Western New York, hey, it happens, you know. There was nothing I could do about it. You do what you have to do. It wasn't like I was going to head over to a men's store and buy a new suit before the game or whatever. So, yeah, you do what
if you had time to do that, you could have gone home and taken a shower and changed your clothes. So, anyway, Paul Hamilton on the Western Hotline from Tampa, finally. Although today doesn't sound as arduous. Anyway, you want to start with the Greenway extension, which has just been made official. We can look back at last night, look forward to Friday. How about Greenway, Paul? Like I've said this to you a few times now. This is not a player that is going to move the needle just by himself, but I feel like if you're ever going to be a good team, he does a lot of stuff that you'll notice watching games that I think will help a good team. So the Sabres now have him, and they need to become a good team someday.
Absolutely. And he didn't get paid like a guy who's going to put up numbers, but that's not his game. His game isn't numbers. If folks are expecting him to score goals and assists and points, you're going to be disappointed. That's not the things that he does to help a hockey team, but you need guys like him to help you win hockey games, and I think this is a good signing. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Kevin Adams has told you at least the last 2 appearances with you about, wanting to re-sign.
He and Zucker both, yes.
Yeah. So this is something that he's been trying to do for at least a couple of months, probably longer, and I think he understands the value of Greenway too. So I think this is a very good, comfortable contract. I don't know. Maybe Greenway could have gotten more than 2 years. On the
open market, yeah.
But I chatted with Greenway for the pregame within the last week or so. These days are all bunched together. One of the days, very recently, and you can tell Jordan's pretty sincere when he talks. He's not just giving you a line of garbage. He also, I don't know if you've ever noticed in an interview, he will stop and think. He wants to give you an intelligent answer. I think he feels if you're going to ask a good question, he's going to give you a thought-out good answer. So, I don't think he's one of those athletes that BS you or anything like that. And, he had said, I love it here. I really like playing here, and I would really like to stay here with the Buffalo Sabres and get something done. He goes, now that's my agent's job. That's not mine. But, it was something that he wanted and was hoping that could get done. So, and it has.
I'm not standing in the way of this move. I can accept why it was worth doing. I wonder, Paul, if you don't mind, bigger picture, how can this team be different next year? You've got a number of guys under big deals already, and maybe there'll be changes by Friday, but I tend to wonder. What are a couple things they can do that are realistic that would be important?
Well, I'll build on something Joe DiBiase said to me, which I found interesting. He said, well, if they re-sign Greenway and Zucker, they're done for next year, right? And I said, well, they can't be, because they just can't roll back what was this year. You look at the lineup, yeah, all right, spots are filled, but that doesn't mean anything to me. I think for this team to be better, they have to understand that the core group that they've committed to is wrong. It's not the right group. And that doesn't mean trade them all. But that means maybe they're all good hockey players in their own right. Maybe they will go somewhere else and it will work for them. But it's not working here as a group. And when I say core group, I'm talking about Dahlin, Power, Cousins, Quinn, Peterka. If I'm missing somebody.
Thompson.
Yeah, Thompson. You're getting the idea. Some of those guys have to go, and that's where you change your team. You have to understand that you have committed to the wrong core, and then you have to evaluate who are the guys that we have committed to that are mistakes or maybe aren't going to blossom into what we think. Because let's be fair, this core has been together now by the end of this season for 3 years. It hasn't worked. So now you have to change some of it. As I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be all of them,
right?
But some of it. And that's where I think the changes need to be made.
That's doable Friday. That doesn't have to wait. Listen to me talking about when moves are going to happen. I don't know. You can do that this week. Don't you agree?
Sure. I mean, look at Byram and Middlestat. That changed part of their core right there. Now, they hadn't committed to Middlestat as part of the core, but I think Middlestat, it assured that they weren't going to, because It was like, well, maybe they will. And then they brought in Byram, who I think they dearly would love to make part of their core, and I think they should, especially with a salary cap that in 3 years is supposed to be around $100 million. I'm not real worried about the salary cap. So I think they should commit to it. And, I'll repeat what I said, and I know Bulldog and I have talked about it maybe from the different angles of it. If I have to make a choice right now between Power and Byram, I think Byram is going to wind up being the better player. And I think I would commit to him if I have to take one or the other. And I'm not as down on Power as everybody else is. Power's numbers actually, until these losing started again, were starting to improve. But, I just think Bo Byram will wind up being the better defenseman. And Bulldog brought up some points to the counterpoint, which is good for a conversation.
Yeah.
But that's, so that's the type of trade, Mike, that I think we're talking about, that they did execute last year a couple of days before the trade deadline.
Right. And that what has been widely reported, like all the big insiders, for whatever that's worth to anyone out there, including you, Paul, the Sabres might be quiet. They've been getting calls on guys like Peterka and Cousins and whomever. Byram is on that list too, and Tuck. But it's all teams that are playoff, trying to make the playoffs, and what they want to trade you is guys that are in the minors or guys that are barely playing on their team because they're so new to the NHL, or it's draft picks. And I don't know if you're going to be able to make a better trade than that in the summer for any of the guys that we're talking about here, Cousins or Byram or Quinn or Peterka or whoever. I would have a hard time seeing Adams make that trade on Friday. He has talked about not wanting to make that trade. And I guess I would respect I'm going to get tangled up. I would respect doing nothing rather than doing that. Because if he trades Dylan Cousins for a pick and a prospect, where am I? That's not going to help me next year. That's not going to make my team different next year. That opens up a spot for Hellenius or Wahlberg or one of the other guys that have been in Rochester. But it's not, adding a player that you can assume is going to, someone with a track record in the NHL. So that's not remaking your team. It's kind of starting over. And I don't know. You could advocate for that. That might be what ends up happening, but I don't know, man. Futures are going to be a very hard sell, I think.
No, absolutely. And those guys you mentioned, I would be, I think, very critical of, even if we see them next year. They've got to start developing these guys like they did Kulik. Kulik played over 100 games in the American Hockey League, and I think they did it the right way with him. And I think once he got his NHL chance, you saw how it's starting to pay dividends. Mm-hmm. Where the other guys, they didn't even spend 100 games. Some of them, Samuelson, I don't even know if he spent. I don't even remember. I'm not gonna guess, but not too many games down there. And some of them didn't spend any. And I think they have to stop trying to. They're really high on Hellenius and Östlund. Östlund is a different case, though, because he played 2 years in the Swedish league. And that was his plan after he got drafted. Now, that's not the American Hockey League or the NHL, but it's a pretty good hockey league. So he's kind of in his third pro season, if you want to say that. But still, I wouldn't rush him up here and bring him. They have to make other moves right now. And if they want to make those guys part of the core, do it right. Don't you learn from what you've just done. And I think, interestingly enough, too, if Kevin Adams is going to continue as the general manager of this team, I'm very curious to see, has he laid out a different plan to Terry Pegula? Because you better have, because the 5-year plan that you just laid out got you in last place in the Eastern Conference. So now you need a different plan. And the plan you've laid out that you wanted to do didn't work. So it better be a different plan, and I'll be curious on Friday to find out what that plan is.
It might be. It's definitely amazing to, I think, a lot of fans that he's even going to get to operate this trade deadline, Paul.
Well, it is to me, too, if I'm being completely honest with you. To me, 5 years is more than long enough, and you haven't made any progress at all. You've regressed. And to me, that's the thing. If we could at least seen some progress, but we haven't, and that's the thing. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen last year, playing his 35 games after January 1st, looked like, all right, it looks like they have their number one goal. He played really well. His numbers were right on top of the league. Was second most games played by a goaltender in that time, and then he's been very inconsistent in this season. So it's like, well, do they really have their number one goaltender? Now I have my doubts. So, just something like that. So that just tells me that the plan that was in place is not right. And if Terry Pegula is planning on leaving him as the general manager, there better be a different plan in place.
Paul, we've got about 3 minutes. Pardon the phrase, did last night seem like another low point?
It did, and when I went to write my article, I thought to myself, I should be writing about the lowest point in the season right now. And then I thought, is this even in the top 5?
That's what I mean. That's what I mean.
Really?
I mean, just
really
over the years,
I wrote
too.
that. I don't even know if this loss to a team that had lost something like 17 out of 19 games was even in the top 5 of low points. That tells you what this season has been about.
Holy cow. Yeah, just off the top of my head, blowing a 4-0 first period lead to Colorado at home. Thompson lying on the ice while Samuelson and Power just look at the guy while the linesman chase the guy that did it around.
Blowing a 3-0 lead in Colorado.
Right. The Montreal game after Pegula showed up to give them a pep talk and they got drilled 6-1 or whatever the hell that was.
Oh, wow.
Like those are all on the list.
Coming in with a 5 or 6 game losing streak, and you have a 5-3 lead midway through the third period, and you lost that game.
Okay. Yep. At least Detroit's quote-unquote good.
I should have known when I brought up low points and said we had 3 minutes that it was just not the right time.
Ready to go. Right. So, yeah, those outranked last night. Last night, Paul, I didn't even get mad watching the game because, I'm a soulless zombie watching the Sabres at this point, like a lot of people. So, I was like, oh, okay. Sure.
I got a note from a guy in a radio station in Vancouver going, look at Paul here. The Sabres and Canucks are competing for low points of the season.
Okay.
All right, Paul. Enjoy your night. Hope you catch up with your buddies Dan and Rob and get some dinner or something.
All right. Take care, guys.
We'll talk to Paul again at this time tomorrow because there's another game. They're in Tampa to play the Lightning. We'll have pregame at 6 tomorrow.
Somebody, incredibly, scheduled a road game next week for 7:30.
Yeah, I saw that.
Detroit.
Yeah.
That person needs to be pointed out publicly, shamed.
It's TNT. Who's in charge of the TNT? It's them.
Find him.
Yeah. Paul's appearance, by the way, with us was brought to you by Equitable Advisors. Planning for your future is about more than just money. Let Equitable be your guide. And by Relax Honda. Relax, we got this.
Greenway from Canton, New York, by the way.
I don't think I ever knew that.
St. Lawrence.
I knew he
went to Boston.
I knew he played but BU. Yeah, I remember.
BU.
I remember liking him a lot at BU. He stood out a lot in college. A big dude.
Is that Jack's team?
No, he's. I think after.
He's younger.
Jack before Jack. I don't remember if they played together or not.
Okay.
Now I don't know. Do we have time? No, we don't. We'll have to. This will be our cliffhanger for tomorrow. We'll have to let you know.
There's
tomorrow.
no way to know.
If I could type faster,
there's no way to find out.
I could tell you.
I had his page open almost the whole time with Paul, but
me too, and then I closed it out.
Low points.
I'm an idiot. Yeah,
I closed it.
Right. Yep.
I already have enough tabs open.
He's at BU. No, he missed Jack. He's at BU 15 through 18.
Eichel is 1 year there.
Yeah, 14, 15.
Chris Trapasso joined us earlier to talk NFL draft. It was fun. That's next here on WGR.
We know